The slipspace exit was wrong from the first second. Chief knew it the way he knew all tactical wrongness, not through a specific sensor reading, through the aggregate of everything the sensor package was telling him, and the specific subset of that aggregate that didn't match the expected parameters. The Pelican slipspace bubble had been stable for 11 hours. The exit coordinates were harvest, a standard reconnaissance insertion. The UNSC Infinity had given him the vector 3 hours before departure, and the vector was clean. The exit was not harvest. The gravitational signature was wrong. Lighter, a smaller body, the planetary mass underneath the exit point, inconsistent with harvest's profile, by a margin that was not instrument error. The atmospheric composition reading was coming in wrong, 2 oxygen-nitrogen mix at the right ratio, but trace elements that didn't match harvest's catalogued atmosphere, sulfuric compounds, the specific atmospheric chemistry of a world with volcanic activity that harvest didn't have, and something else. Something the sensor package was registering without being able to categorize it. The readout producing a specific kind of absence rather than a presence. The way a sensor registered a material that wasn't in its library, not as an error, but as a consistent nothing where a reading should have been. The nothing that meant the library was incomplete rather than the environment was empty. He had 4 seconds of slipspace exit to process this. He used them. Uncharted system. Planetary body. Atmosphere breathable. Gravitational field within standard parameters. Unknown energy readings significant. Multiple sources consistent with active technology. No UNSC transponders. No known faction signatures. The Pelican came through. Venus. He didn't know it was Venus, yet the name would come later. From a guardian with a ghost that talked faster than was operationally useful. What he knew in the first 3 seconds of atmospheric entry was that the surface below was a dense jungle environment. That the ruins visible through the cloud layer were human in architectural origin, but had been abandoned for long enough that the vegetation had made significant claims on them, and that the energy signatures he'd been reading from slipspace were concentrated in a specific valley formation approximately 8 kilometers northeast of his current vector. He adjusted his approach. He brought the Pelican down in a clearing that had been a landing pad once the permacrete still visible under the vegetation's progress, the specific texture of military-grade landing infrastructure that had been quality built and then left to whatever claimed it. The Pelican's landing struts found the permacrete under 6 centimeters of growth and held. He did a full sensor sweep before opening the hatch. The energy signatures from the valley were stronger at this range. Still no category, the sensor package running its full library against the readings and producing consistent nothing, the same absence that meant the library was incomplete. The signatures had a quality he'd felt before. Not Forerunner exactly, not Covenant, but with the specific regularity of something that was running a deliberate process rather than producing energy as a byproduct of existence. Technology. Active, purposeful technology of a type he hadn't encountered. Movement on the perimeter. Multiple contacts. Bipedal, but wrong. The movement signatures, inconsistent with human or known Covenant biomechanics, the specific motion of something whose locomotion had been engineered rather than evolved. Fast, very fast. And there were a lot of them. He opened the hatch with the BR-85 in his hands and the M6H on his hip and the combat knife on his left forearm and the full Mjolnir sensor package running at maximum, because maximum was the available. Setting and maximum was what the situation called for. He stepped out. They came from 3 directions, not the tactical 3-direction approach of a military force that had assessed his position and coordinated. The simultaneous 3-direction arrival of something that existed in multiple locations at once and had decided that all of its locations should converge on him at the same moment. White geometric forms. Humanoid, but assembled rather than born the specific visual signature of constructed bodies running a non-biological locomotion pattern, arms that extended into weapons rather than holding them, heads that rotated independently of the neck's biological range. His sensor package had nothing. He filed this and started shooting. The BR-85 worked. That was the important data point from the first 3 seconds. The hardware functioned in this environment's physics, the ballistic rounds interacting with the geometric constructs in the expected way, kinetic energy transfer producing the expected damage. Whatever these things were, they were physical. Physical things could be shot. He moved while shooting the trained pattern, never static, always one step ahead of where the targeting data said he'd been. The Mjolnir's hydraulics, giving him the speed to make the pattern work against multiple simultaneous contacts. 3 down in 6 seconds. 4 more emerging from the vegetation at the clearing's edge. The specific spawning pattern of something that had more where these came from and knew it. He went for the Pelican's gun mount. The 70mm chain gun solved the volume problem. 12 contacts in 4 seconds. The clearing's perimeter temporarily clear. He reloaded the BR-85 while the chain gun was running, his hands doing the work below the level of his attention, while his attention was on the tree line and the valley and the energy signatures that were spiking in response to the engagement. They knew he was here now. Tactical. Assessment. Engaged by unknown construct entities. Technology category. Unidentified. Physical ballistics effective. Suppression capability established. Unknown force, disposition beyond perimeter. Energy signatures consistent with active military technology. Exfiltration route compromised. Pelican cannot achieve orbit without exposure to unknown force. He needed a defensible position. He needed information. He needed, and this was the first moment of the specific cost. AMSAL. Absence. The first reach for the neural interface. He needed Cortana. She wasn't there. The interface was there. The hardware was functional. The specific architecture of the connection they'd built over 15 years, the neural pathway worn smooth with use, all of that was intact. What wasn't there was her. He filed this too. He went for the ruins. The ruins were Ishtar Academy. He didn't know the name yet. What he knew was that the architectural language was human, specifically human. The structural choices of people who had been building for function in a dangerous environment, the specific practical aesthetic of a scientific installation that had expected to be there for a long time and had built accordingly. The construction was old, decades at minimum. The vegetation had made significant progress, and throughout the ruins on every surface, integrated into the walls and floors and what remained of the ceilings, the geometric technology of the construct entities. Not grafted on, grown in. The specific integration of something that had been working on these ruins long enough that the distinction between the human architecture and the construct technology had become philosophical rather than physical. He moved through the ruins with the BR-85 up and the sensor package running and the energy signatures getting stronger as he went deeper into the complex, and found the gate. It was not a Forerunner gate. It was not Covenant. It was something that operated on principles he'd seen before, the dimensional displacement technology that the Forerunner had used for certain classified applications, the specific physics of a mechanism that folded space rather than traversed it. But the implementation was different, older. The gate's architecture had been running longer than anything he'd ever personally encountered, had the specific quality of infrastructure that had been operating since before anyone currently using it had been born, active, pulsing, and pulling at the Pelican slipspace field in a way that explained precisely why his exit coordinates had been wrong. The gate had redirected him, not deliberately. The gate didn't have deliberate. It was infrastructure running on automated processes without active oversight. But the slipspace field's interaction with the gate's temporal physics had produced a redirect that had deposited him here rather than Harvest, and the same field was still active, which meant anything he did with slipspace in the vicinity of this gate would produce the same result. He was not getting home through slipspace from here. He filed this. A sound behind him. He turned. 3 figures at the ruin's entrance. Humanoid, human scale. 1 shorter, 2 standard height. The shorter one was moving with the specific economy of someone who had been in firefights long enough that movement between firefights was as calibrated as movement during them. The 2 standard height figures flanked without being told to, the automatic tactical positioning of people who had operated together long enough that the formation was instinct. They were wearing armor, not Mjolnir. Something with the same functional philosophy form, following the specific requirements of combat in difficult environments. Materials chosen for protection rather than presentation. The armor had the visual language of something handmade in quantity rather than mass-produced, each piece slightly different from the others. The specific aesthetic of technology that had been developed under resource constraints and had found its own answers to the problems those constraints imposed. The shorter figure raised one hand. Not a weapon, a greeting, from somewhere near the figure's head, not from the figure, from something hovering near it, a small geometric object that moved independently, a voice. "Hi," it said. "We saw your ship. What are you?" Chief looked at the small geometric object. The small geometric object looked at him. The sensor package had nothing on it either. "Chief Petty Officer, John, 117, he said. UNSC Navy. The small geometric object was quiet for a moment. "What's a UNSC?" it said. The shorter figure put a hand on the geometric object. "Ghost," she said. Later, she looked at Chief. She had the specific quality of someone who had fought a great deal and had stopped finding it remarkable. The armor's visor was up. He could see her face. Look, young by civilian standards. Not young by the standards of people who did this work. "You came through the gate," she said. It wasn't a question. "A slip-space interaction with what I believe is your gate, yes," Chief said. She looked at the gate, at the chain gun marking on the clearing's perimeter, visible through the ruin's entrance, at the BR-85 in his hands. "How many Vex did you kill on the way?" "In," she said. 17 confirmed, he said. "More probable." She looked at the other 2 members of her fire team. Then she looked at the chief. "Okay," she said. You'd better come with us." "Where?" he said. "The tower," she said. "The Vanguard is going to want to talk to you." "What's Vanguard?" he said. The small geometric object made a sound. "Oh, this is going to be a lot," it said. The jumpship was not a Pelican. Chief noted this in the first 3 seconds of boarding it. The specific differences in the engineering philosophy. The way the internal space had been optimized for a different set of operational priorities. The controls designed for a single pilot rather than a crew. The Guardian who flew it, the shorter one, who had given her name as Petra, which was either a call sign or a given name, and she hadn't clarified, flew with the specific confidence of someone who had made this approach many times and trusted the ship to do what ships were supposed to do. The 2 fireteam members who had come with her were a Titan named Hollis, who didn't talk, and a warlock named Seno, who talked enough for both of them. Seno had been running observations on Chief since the ruins, not covert, direct. The specific scientific attention of someone who had encountered something they found genuinely interesting and had decided that the social convention of not staring was less important than the data. Chief had been subjected to more. Intrusive observation by Dr. Halsey. He let Seno observe the small geometric object, Ghost, Petra had called it, which appeared to be both a species name and an individual name simultaneously, had not stopped talking since the ruins. It was hovering near Chief's right shoulder at a distance of approximately 40 centimeters and providing a continuous running commentary on everything it was observing in a voice that had the specific quality of something that was genuinely delighted by new information and had no operational reason to moderate the delight. "Your armor is interesting," Ghost said. "The sensor suite is very sophisticated. I tried to scan it and it scanned me back. That doesn't usually happen." A pause. "Are you enhanced?" "Your biometrics are reading unusual. Elevated bone density, enhanced musculature, reaction time that doesn't match standard human baseline." Another pause. "You're not a standard human." "No," Chief said. "What are you?" Ghost said. "A Spartan," Chief said. Ghost processed this. "Is that a unit designation or a species classification?" "Program designation," Chief said. "What program?" Ghost said. "Spartangent 2, Chief said. "What's a Spartangent 2? Ghost said. "Ghost," Petra said, from the pilot's seat. The tone of someone who had said a person's name in that specific tone many times before and had never fully resolved the behavior it was meant to address. "I'm gathering information," Ghost said. "The Vanguard is going to want information. I'm being helpful." "You're being you," Petra said. "Same thing," Ghost said. Chief looked at the Ghost. At the small geometric object hovering at his shoulder with its single eye tracking him with the focused attention of something that was running a continuous assessment and finding consistent interest in the results. He thought about Cortana. The thought arrived and departed in the time it took him to process it. The specific discipline of a man who had learned that certain thoughts needed to be acknowledged and then filed, rather than engaged within operational contexts. He acknowledged it, he filed it. "Your Ghost," he said to Petra. "Is it standard issue or assigned?" "Hi." Petra glanced at him over her shoulder. "Assigned. Every guardian gets a Ghost. Ghost finds its guardian." "How?" Chief said. "I looked for her," Ghost said simply, "for a long time, and then I found her." A pause. "Do you have a Ghost?" "No," Chief said. The Ghost was quiet for a moment. This was notable because Ghost had not been quiet since the ruins. "Oh," it said. Then, smaller. "I'm sorry." The Chief looked at the approaching city. The tower was visible from 40 kilometers out. Not small, the specific scale of infrastructure built to serve a significant population and to say, communicate the specific message that the population intended to remain. The architecture had the visual language of something that had been built in stages over a long period, each stage adding to rather than replacing what came before. The accumulated decisions of many generations of builders, all trying to solve the same problem from slightly different positions. The last city, Petra, had explained the name on the flight. Chief had asked the necessary questions and received the necessary information and had processed it against the operational picture he was building a civilization that had contracted to a single defended location under sustained existential threat, maintaining a perimeter against multiple hostile factions, while keeping the population inside the perimeter alive and functional. The Vanguard as the military command structure. The Guardians as the operational force, the Traveler as he had not fully resolved the Traveler yet. The Traveler was visible from the same distance as the tower, a sphere. Enormous, the sensor package gave him the dimensions, and the dimensions were the specific scale of something that made the tower look like a detail rather than a landmark. White. Damaged even at this distance, the sensor package could resolve the specific surface damage of a body that had experienced a significant impact event at some point and had not fully repaired, hanging above the city at a fixed point, not in orbit held. Something was holding it in position above the city at a fixed point, and that something was not conventional gravitational mechanics. The sensor package had nothing. He was developing a category for things the sensor package had nothing for. He was calling it, internally, to light-adjacent phenomena, a placeholder category for the specific consistent nothing that the sensor package produced when it encountered anything in this universe that operated through the mechanism that powered the Guardians. And their abilities, and apparently also whatever was holding the traveler in position above the city. He would need more data before the category became useful. The tower's landing platforms were busy multiple ships in transit, the specific choreography of a military installation processing a high operational tempo. Petra brought them in on a restricted approach vector that bypassed the commercial traffic and deposited them on a platform elevated above the main concourse. 3 people were waiting. The chief assessed them in order of probable threat. The first was large, not his scale, but large for a baseline human. The specific physical type of someone who had been doing significant physical work for a very long time. Blue armor. The posture of command so complete and habitual that it was no longer posture, it was simply how the man stood. His expression was the specific expression of a senior commander who has been informed of an unexpected variable and has arrived to assess the variable personally. The second was smaller, female. Robes rather than armor, with the specific choice of someone whose capability didn't require armor to express itself. Her attention on Chief was the most focused attention in the immediate environment, not the wariness of the first figure or the cautious assessment of the third, something more precise. The specific attention of someone who already had hypotheses and was testing them. The third was different. The third was leaning against the railing with his arms crossed, and the expression of a man who had been told he needed to be present for an important meeting and had decided that being present didn't require him to perform the taking it seriously. His armor had the specific quality of something that had been customized over a long period by someone with strong opinions about what they wanted it to look like. He had a hand cannon on his hip that had been modified past the point where the original manufacturer would have recognized it. He was looking at Chief with the specific expression of someone who had just seen something they found genuinely delightful and was trying to decide how to engage with it. "Zavala," Petra said to the large man. "This is Chief Petty Officer John 117. He came through the Vex Gate in the Ishtar Sink." Zavala looked at Chief. Chief looked at Zavala. The specific, mutual assessment of 2 people who had both spent their lives in command positions, recognizing the same quality in the other and taking the appropriate operational note. "How?" Zavala said. "Slipspace interaction with the gate's temporal field," Chief said. "My FTL drive produced an exit vector that was redirected by the gate's active physics. I didn't choose the destination." "Slipspace," Ikora said. The second figure, stepping forward. "That's a form of faster-than-light travel?" "Yes," Chief said. "Using folded space," she said. Not a question, she was describing it back to him with the precision of someone who understood the concept and wanted to confirm the implementation. "Correct," he said. "The Vex Gate uses similar mechanics," she said. Which would explain the interaction. She was looking at his armor now, with the same focused attention she'd given him from the platform. "Your sensor package, what is it reading?" "Currently," Chief said, "a significant amount of nothing." Her expression shifted, not surprise, something more specific. The expression of someone who had been told something that confirmed a hypothesis they found concerning. "Nothing how?" she said. "The sensor package has a complete library of known energy signatures, material compositions, and technological architectures," Chief said. "In this environment, approximately 40% of the readings it should be producing are returning consistent null values. The null values are consistent, same type of nothing, every time. Which means the library is incomplete rather than the sensor malfunctioning." "The light," she said. "I've assigned it a placeholder category," Chief said. "Light adjacent phenomena. I don't have enough data to define it more specifically." "No," she said. You wouldn't. She looked at Zavala. He can't see the light. Is that a problem? Zavala said. The tone of a man who was asking whether something was a threat rather than whether it was philosophically interesting. It's significant, Ikora said. For who? Said the third figure from the railing. Everyone looked at him. He had not moved from his position against the railing. He was looking at Chief with the delighted expression still fully operational. Cade. Zavala said. I'm just asking, Cade, Sik said. Significant for us or significant for him? He pushed off the railing and walked toward Chief with the specific gait of someone whose relationship with gravity was more negotiable than most people's. He stopped at 4 meters and looked up. The height differential between them was considerable, and the delighted expression intensified. You're big? He said. Yes, Chief said. I'm big too, Cade, Sik said. Relatively speaking. For an exo. He paused. You know what an exo is? No, Chief said. We're going to have a lot to talk about, Cade, Sik said. He turned to Zavala. We're keeping him, right? Tell me we're keeping him. We're assessing him, Zavala said. We're keeping him, Cade, Sik said. He turned back to Chief. Welcome to the tower. I'm Cade, Sik, Hunter, Vanguard. That's Zavala, Titan Vanguard, currently concerned. That's Ikora, Warlock Vanguard, currently running 12 simultaneous hypotheses about you. And you've met Petra. He paused. Do you have a name other than Chief Petty Officer John 117? Chief, he said. Chief Cade, Sik repeated. He appeared to find this satisfying. I can work with the Chief. Zavala looked at Chief with the expression of a man who had managed Cade, Sik for long enough to understand that the enthusiasm was not the problem and was not going to become less. Enthusiastic regardless of what Zavala said about it. You'll need quarters, Zavala said. And a full debrief. And a medical evaluation. I'll agree to 2 of those, Chief said. Zavala looked at him. The medical evaluation requires helmet removal, Chief said. I don't remove my helmet in unsecured environments. A pause. This is the tower, Zavala said. It's unsecured to me, Chief said. I've been here for approximately 4 minutes. Zavala looked at Ikora. Ikora looked at Chief with the focused attention she'd been running since the platform. Give him 48. Sens. Hours, she said to Zavala. Then ask again. 48 hours for what? Zavala said. For the tower to become secured, she said. Cade, Sik, made a sound that was adjacent to a laugh. I like him, he said. I'm just going to say that now and continue saying it. Noted, Zavala said. He looked at the Chief. I'll show you to the briefing room. I'll come. Ikora said. I'll come, Cade, Sik said. Someone needs to manage field operations, Zavala said to Cade. Ghost can do it, Cade said. He looked at Petra's ghost, who was still hovering near Chief's shoulder. Can you do it? I'm not your ghost, Petra's ghost said. You're the closest ghost, Cade said. That's not how that works, Ghost said. Chief looked at the towers. Concourse below them, the Guardians moving through it in the specific organized flow of an installation at operational tempo, the variety of armor types and weapons configurations, suggesting a force that had been assembled from multiple sources over a long period, each piece of it finding its own solution to the same problem. He thought about the sensor package and its 40% null values. He thought about what a civilization looked like when it had been defending one city for long. Enough that the defense had become the civilization's primary organizing principle. He thought about reach. He filed it. The briefing room, he said to Zavala. Lead the way. The briefing room was on the tower's upper level, not the public concourse, the operational infrastructure behind it. The specific architecture of a command center that had been built for function and had accumulated the specific character of a space that had been used hard for a long time. Maps on every surface, not digital exclusively. Physical too. The printed and annotated maps of commanders who had learned that digital systems failed at the worst moments and had maintained redundancy. The solar system is rendered in 3 dimensions above the central table. Each planet and moon tagged with current threat assessments in a color coding system that Chief reads in approximately 10 seconds. A lot of red. Ikora was already at the table when Chief and Zavala arrived. She had moved faster than either of them through routes she clearly knew better, the specific efficiency of someone who had been in this building long enough that the building was an extension of her operational awareness. She had a display running that Chief couldn't fully read from the doorway, but that had the visual signature of sensor data being processed against an incomplete model. Cade, 6, arrived 30 seconds after them. He had a mug of something. The Chief did not ask what. Cade 6 had the specific quality of someone who always had something in his hand that wasn't a weapon, while also always having a weapon on his person that he could access faster than most people could decide to access. The hand cannon on his hip had the trigger guard filed down. Chief noted this because field trigger guards were the modification of someone who drew fast and found the guard an obstacle. He filed it. "Sit," Zavala said. Chief sat. The chair was not built for Mjolnir's dimensions, but it held. Most chairs held if you distributed the weight correctly. He'd learned this early. "Standard debrief protocol," Zavala said. "We'll need your full operational history, your point of origin, your chain of command, and your assessment of your current situation." "Before that," Chief said. Zavala looked at him. "The sensor readings I've been collecting since Venus," Chief said. "I want to share them with your intelligence officer." He looked at Ikora. "You're running an incomplete model on that display. I may have data that fills part of the gap." Ikora looked at the display, then at Chief. "What kind of data?" she said. "Dimensional anomaly signatures," Chief said. "Collected passively by Mjolnir's sensor package since my arrival. Some of the readings match what you're modeling, some don't. The ones that don't may be significant." "Maybe," Ikora said. "I don't make claims I can't support," Chief said. "Maybe it is an accurate assessment." Ikora looked at Zavala. Zavala had the expression of a commander running the calculus of an unknown asset, offering information, the specific problem of not knowing whether the offer was genuine, a manipulation, or simply incomplete in ways that would become apparent later. "Share the data," Zavala said. "We'll assess it." Chief interfaced Mjolnir's sensor package with the briefing room's display system not directly, through a data transfer protocol that the Mjolnir's systems produced as a compressed file that any compatible display system could read. The tower's systems took 4 seconds to process the file format, which was longer than UNSC standard, but shorter than he'd expected, given that the format was completely alien to this universe's technology base. The display was updated. Ikora still went, not the stillness of someone who had stopped moving, the specific stillness of someone whose attention had become so focused that the rest of their processing had been deprioritized to support it. She was looking at a specific cluster of readings in the outer system data beyond Saturn's equivalent, in the dark beyond the mapped patrol routes, in the space that the solar system's color-coded threat assessment had tagged not red, but a specific gray that Chief had read as unknown, and was now reading as deliberately untagged. "Where did you get this?" Ikora said. "Collected passively," Chief said. "Mjolnir runs continuous full-spectrum sensor sweeps. These readings were in the background data from the moment I entered the system. They're faint at the threshold of detection. Whatever is producing them is a significant distance out." "How significant?" Ikora said. "Beyond your mapped patrol routes," Chief said. "The readings are consistent with objects of significant mass moving through space at velocities inconsistent with natural orbital mechanics. They're being propelled." "How many objects?" Zavala said, as His voice had shifted, not alarm exactly, the specific controlled register of a commander processing threat-level information and applying the discipline to not let the processing show. At least 4, Chief said, possibly more. The sensor package's resolution at that range has limitations. 4 is the confirmed count. The probable count is higher. Possibly. Cade 6 had put down his mug. This was notable. The shape of the readings, Ikora said. She was pulling the data apart on the display, isolating the specific signatures, running them against her existing model. The dimensional resonance component this is consistent with what my hidden has been trying to resolve for months. She looked at the chief. We've had fragments of this signature. Not enough to build a complete picture. Your sensor data, she stopped, fills part of the gap, Chief said. Yes, she said. The sensor package has Forerunner-derived calibration in some of its systems, Chief said. The Forerunner was a civilization that built monitoring technology capable of detecting dimensional anomalies at ranges and resolutions that standard military sensors don't match. Some of that calibration has transferred to Mjolnir through prolonged proximity to active Forerunner systems. He paused. I don't fully understand the mechanism. I know it works. Forerunner, Ikora said. The word landing with a specific weight, not unfamiliarity, recognition. An ancient civilization, highly advanced, believed to have seeded life across the galaxy. Yes. Chief said. You know of them. We have parallel mythology, Ikora said carefully. The Traveler, the Darkness, Iko, the civilizations that existed before. She paused. The shape of your Forerunner history and our own history have similarities that I find significant. What kind of similarities? Chief said. The darkness came, she said. Whatever these objects are, she gestured at the display. This is consistent with the darkness, with its advanced signature, its precursor signal. She paused. We've been looking for it. We knew it was coming. We didn't know when or what the first detectable sign would look like. Chief looked at the display, at the 4 confirmed objects moving through the dark beyond the mapped patrol routes. He thought about extinction-level threats, about the Halo array and what had necessitated it, about the Gravemind's argument which had been wrong and had also contained things that were true, the specific combination that made the Gravemind the most dangerous intelligence he'd encountered. About what it looked like when something vast moved toward inhabited space with a purpose that had nothing to do with the inhabitants' preferences. He thought about the shape of the readings. I've encountered precursor signals before, Chief said. Not from this threat, from a different one. But the architecture of an extinction-level approach has consistent characteristics regardless of implementation. He paused. What you're seeing in that data is not the threat. It's the announcement. The briefing room was very quiet. Cade 6 was looking at the display with an expression Chief hadn't seen on him yet. Not the delight, or the casual competence, or the performed disengagement. Something underneath those things. The expression of a man who had fought for a long time and had developed a functional relationship with the concept of overwhelming odds and was currently updating that relationship's parameters. How long? Zavala said. Unknown, Chief said. The velocity data is insufficient for a reliable timeline projection. Months, at minimum. The upper bound is less clear. He paused. But the signal is strengthening. Whatever is generating it is getting closer. The rate of signal strengthening would give you a better timeline than the velocity data. Ikora, Zavala said. I need time with this data, Ikora said. She was still on the display, still pulling the readings apart, still running them against the model that now had significantly more to work with. Days, not weeks. But I need to run the full analysis before I give you a number. How many days? Zavala said. 2, she said. Maybe 3. 2, he said. She didn't respond. Which was her version of acknowledgement. Zavala looked at Chief. The debrief, he said. Your full operational history, your point of origin, your chain of command. He paused. Everything. Some of that is classified, Chief said. By whom? Zavala said. You're in our solar system. Whatever classified your information isn't here. Chief considered this. It was technically accurate. I'll give you what's operationally relevant, he said. I'll determine. What's operationally relevant, Zavala said. So will I, Chief said. We'll find the intersection. Zavala looked at him for a long moment. You negotiate like a titan, Cade, Six said. That's a compliment, Cade, Zavala said. I'm just saying, Cade said. He's going to be useful, I can tell. I have good instincts about these things. Your instincts got 3 strike teams killed last month, Zavala said. My instincts about people, Cade said. My operational instincts are a separate category. The strike teams knew what they were signing up for. He looked at Chief. They were fine. Mostly. Chief looked at Cade. 6. At the hand cannon with the filed trigger guard. At the expression that ran delight over the surface of something that had been doing this for a very long time and had made its peace with what that cost. He thought about the specific quality of a person who used humor as a management tool for the specific weight of what they carried. He filed it. The debrief, Chief said to Zavala. Operationally relevant material. I'll start with what I know about extinction-level threats and the specific tactical and strategic responses that have historically been effective against them. Ikora looked up from the display. That's a good place to start, she said. Yes, Zavala said. It is. Chief looked at the display, at the 4 confirmed objects moving through the dark. At the solar system's color-coded threat assessment, with its significant amounts of red and its specific gray of deliberately untagged unknowns, he began. The Cosmodrome operation was Cade's idea. Chief had been in the tower for 31 hours when Cade, 6, appeared in the doorway of the quarters. Zavala had assigned him a room that was larger than Chief strictly needed and smaller than Mjolnir's dimensions preferred, with a view of the city's western districts and the traveler visible at the window's upper edge if he stood at a specific angle. He had not slept. He had used the 31 hours for the things 31 hours were useful for reviewing Mjolnir's accumulated sensor data, building his operational picture of the Destiny universe's specific threat landscape, reading the tactical briefings that Ikora had provided through a data transfer that she'd initiated without asking permission, and that he'd accepted without commenting on the lack of permission because the information was useful. And the protocol question was less important than the information. The tactical briefings were thorough. The threat landscape was significant. Fallen, a species in civilizational collapse. Fractured into houses, opportunistic, highly varied in tactical capability depending on the house and the situation. Dangerous in numbers. Some houses are more organized than others. Hive. A species of ancient predators operating on a philosophical framework built around a concept they called the sword logic, the idea that existence was justified by the ability to take it from others. Old. Very old. Connected to something that Chief's reading of the briefings placed in the same general category as the darkness, but was not identical to it. Worshippers rather than agents. Cabal. A military empire with the specific organizational character of something that had been optimized for conquest over a very long period. Professional. Well-equipped. The tactical briefings described them as currently in a holding pattern in the outer system occupying Mars, running operations that were extensive enough to constitute a siege, but not aggressive enough to constitute an assault, waiting for something. Vex, the geometric constructs from Venus. The briefings described them as existing across multiple timelines simultaneously, as having a goal that was less conquest and more the specific project of making themselves the inevitable outcome of every possible future. Incomprehensible at the philosophical level, highly comprehensible at the tactical level. They attacked, they died when you shot them, they had more, taken, corrupted versions of the above species, transformed by a darkness-adjacent power that had belonged to an entity called Oryx, who was now dead, currently leaderless. Currently running autonomous corruption operations without the Taken King's specific direction. Chief had read the Taken briefings 3 times, each time the specific shape of the threat, the way it consumed and converted, the way it spread through a population of existing threats and transformed them into something that served a larger purpose, had produced in him the specific recognition of a pattern he'd seen before. Not identical, the same shape. End quote. He was thinking about this when Cade appeared in the doorway. Cosmodrome, Cade said. Without preamble, which Chief was beginning to understand, was Cade's standard operating mode. Old Russian settlement, Earth's surface, northeast of here. We have a Taken situation developing. 3 strike teams have reported contact over the last 6 hours. Vanguard wants a fireteam assessment before we commit significant resources. Why are you telling me? Chief said. Because I'm leading the assessment fireteam and I want you on it, Cade said. Also because Zavala said I could ask you and I'm asking. Chief looked at him. Zavala approved this, he said. He said, and I'm quoting, if you're going to take the asset into the field, you should do it in a controlled environment where we can assess his capabilities without committing him to an operation we don't have full intelligence on, Cade said, which in Zavala language means yes. The Cosmodrome is a controlled environment, Chief said. Relatively, Cade said, compared to some things. A pause. There will be Taken, possibly significant numbers of Taken. If that changes the calculus, it doesn't, Chief said. Thought so, Cade said. We leave at 20. The Cosmodrome was a graveyard. Chief read it from the air as Cade's jumpship made its approach, the specific visual signature of infrastructure that had been built for a massive logistical purpose and had been abandoned mid-operation. Rockets on launch gantries that had never launched. Assembly buildings the size of small cities. The accumulated capital investment of a civilization's interstellar ambitions sitting in the Russian winter doing what abandoned things did, being reclaimed. The fallen had been here long enough to make it theirs. The fall. Architecture of their occupation layered over the original construction, the specific aesthetic of a species that had developed a relationship with salvage and had turned salvage into culture. Their structures were built into and around the original buildings rather than replacing them. The fallen's relationship with the ruins, the specific relationship of people who had arrived after catastrophe and had decided the catastrophe's remnants were a resource. They descended into the outer settlement. The fireteam was 5. Cade, at point, with the hand cannon and a movement pattern that made his specific approach to tactical situations clear immediately. Fast, aggressive, comfortable with chaos, in a way that suggested he produced chaos deliberately as an operational tool rather than tolerating it as a cost. 2 hunters whose names Chief logged and who moved with the trained silence of people who had been doing this for long enough that silence was the default. A Titan named Briss who reminded Chief of Sergeant Johnson in ways that were probably not coincidental given that certain personalities were apparently consistent across universes, and Chief, the Taken signatures, were in the settlement's lower levels, the specific reading that Mjolnir's sensors produced for the Taken, which was not nothing. The Taken registered differently from everything else Chief had encountered in this universe. Not clearly the sensor package's light-adjacent null category applied to the Taken the same way it applied to the Guardian's abilities, the same consistent nothing where a reading should have been. But the Taken produced a secondary reading that the Guardian's abilities didn't, a dimensional displacement signature. The specific physics of something that had been taken from one state of existence into another and was now occupying the physical world while simultaneously existing somewhere else. He, could track it. Faintly, imprecisely, but track. "You're reading something," Cade said, quietly. "The operational register, the delight, filed for later." "Dimensional displacement signatures," Chief said. "The Taken read differently from your other threats. There's a secondary signature that my sensors can track." "How accurately?" Cade said. "Enough to give you general direction and rough distance," Chief said. "Not enough for precision targeting. That's more than my ghost gives me in a darkness zone," Cade said. Chief filed this for later, the darkness zone reference connecting to the briefings. He'd read the specific physics of spaces where the light was diminished or absent, and Guardians operated at reduced capacity. "Below us," Chief said, "approximately 40 meters. Moving toward us or away," Cade said. "Neither," Chief said. "Lateral, patrol pattern." Cade looked at Briss. A look that communicated something in the shorthand of people who had worked together long enough to have compressed specific tactical communications into expressions. Briss nodded. They went down. The first contact was a Taken. Vandal. Chief recognized the base species from the Fallen briefings bipedal, four-armed, the specific anatomy of a species that had evolved for an environment that rewarded multiple simultaneous manipulation capabilities. The Taken version was the Fallen Vandal and not the Fallen Vandal simultaneously. The black smoke corruption layered over the base biology, the eyes replaced with the specific luminescence of something that had been removed from one existence and installed in another. It moved wrong. Not the movement of a biological creature in an environment, the movement of something that appeared and disappeared within the same space. The specific blink teleportation that the briefings had described as a common Taken tactical behavior. Present, not present. Present again at a different location. The BR-85 was not optimized for a target that moved like this. He switched to the MA-5D. Full auto, at the rate of fire that the MA-5D was designed for, produced enough rounds in the space the Vandal was occupying that the probability of landing hits was acceptable, even accounting for the blink pattern. 3 hits confirmed. The Taken Vandal went down, but the going down was different from a biological target's going down, not the physical collapse of a system that had been damaged past function. The specific dissipation of something that had existed in 2 states and had lost the cohesion that maintained the occupation of both. It unmade itself rather than dying. Chief registered this, filed it. More came. The engagement that followed was instructive. Chief had been in thousands of engagements across 30 years of active service and had developed a comprehensive internal taxonomy of engagement types based on the specific tactical dynamics that produced specific tactical problems. This engagement added a new category. Taken combat was the specific problem of an enemy that used the same space you were using but wasn't fully in it. The blink teleportation wasn't random. It had a pattern that the Taken individual used consistently. The specific movement habits of something that had been given a capability and had developed instincts around that capability. Once he identified the pattern for each Taken type in the engagement, he could predict the next position with approximately 60% accuracy, which was better than 0 and worse than he preferred. He adapted. The Guardians were also adapting. He watched the fireteam find the Taken's rhythms and adjust to them in real time. The specific tactical competence of experienced operators encountering a known threat type and applying their developed responses to it. Cade, in particular, was running a movement pattern that interacted with the Taken's blink behavior in a way that suggested he had been doing this specifically for long enough to have opinions about how it worked. Then Briss died. Not the ambiguous death of someone who had been removed from the engagement specific, clear, a Taken captain's weapon connecting with Briss's chest plate at a range where the armor's protection was insufficient. Briss went down, hard. Chief moved to cover the body. Standard protocol. You covered a fallen soldier's position until the situation was resolved, or until you knew the body was irrecoverable. He suppressed the captain with the MA5D and kept the position and processed the tactical adjustment that Briss's removal from the fireteam's geometry required. Briss sat up. Chief stopped processing the tactical adjustment. Briss sat up the specific sequence of a resurrection, ghost emerging from somewhere in the armor, and running the process that Chief had read about in the briefings and had registered intellectually and was now registering viscerally: the light. The specific quality of something being returned from absence. Briss's armor repaired in real time as the ghost completed the process, and Briss stood with the specific practiced movement of someone for whom standing up after dying was a normal operational occurrence. "I'm up," Briss said, to the fire team, who had continued operating because they had known Briss was coming back, who had not. None of them had registered Briss's death as a loss, because Briss's death was not a loss. It was a temporary removal from the fire team's combat effectiveness, and the ghost's resurrection process was fast enough that the temporary removal could be operationally managed. Chief held his position. He suppressed the captain. He watched Briss rejoin the engagement. He thought about every soldier he had ever covered who had not come back. He filed it. The engagement ended 4 minutes later. 7 taken down. Fire team intact. Cosmodrome lower settlement cleared. Cade came to stand beside him in the aftermath. "You covered Briss," he said. Not accusatory, observational. "Yes," Chief said. "You didn't know he was coming back," Cade said. "No," Chief said. Cade was quiet for a moment. "First time you've seen a resurrection," he said. "Yes," Chief said. Cade looked at the space where Briss had been down and was now not down, at the cleared settlement, at the dissipated taken residue on the walls. "How are you doing with that?" Cade said. Chief looked at him. "I'm processing it," he said. "That's not what I asked," Cade said. Chief was quiet for a moment. "I'm filing it," he said. "For later." Cade, 6, looked at him with an expression that was not the delight and was not the competence and was not the performed disengagement. Something underneath those things that Chief had seen once before in the briefing room when the outer system data had updated the display. "Yeah," Cade said. "I know how that goes." He turned and walked back toward the extraction point. Chief followed. Above them, through the Cosmodrome's broken ceiling, the sky was the specific gray of an Earth winter. The traveler was visible at the horizon. He looked at it for a moment. Then he looked at the extraction point. He moved. Ikora's workspace was not the briefing room. It was 2 levels below the briefing room in a section of the tower that Chief's access credentials provisionally issued by Zavala, with the specific reluctance of a commander who had decided provisional was the most he was willing to commit to allowed him to reach, but that most of the tower's population apparently didn't visit. The corridor leading to it had the specific quality of a space that was technically accessible and practically understood to be Ikora's, the ambient social architecture of an institution communicating that this was her territory without posting a sign. He knocked. "Come in," she said. The workspace was large and organized in a way that was not immediately legible, but that Chief read within 30 seconds of entering, as the organization of someone who had been working on the same set of interconnected problems for a very long time and had arranged the space to reflect the connections rather than the individual pieces, multiple displays. Physical notes alongside digital ones, the same redundancy practice he'd observed in the briefing room, extended here to a degree that suggested Ikora had been burned by digital failures at a critical moment and had developed the physical backup as a matter of principle rather than habit. Books, actual books. Physical books in the specific variety of material that suggested they had come from many different sources over a long period, some clearly pre-collapse, others newer, none of them part of a matched set. She had read all of them, The specific wear of genuine use was on every spine. She was at the central display. "Sit," she said. Without looking up, he sat. She ran the display for another 2 minutes before she turned to him. The 2 minutes were not delay, they were the completion of something she had been in the middle of when he knocked and had continued rather than abandoning mid-process. He appreciated this. He had been interrupted mid-process enough times to have opinions about it. "The Cosmodrome operation," she said. "Yes," he said. "Cade's debrief said you covered Briss during the resurrection," she said. "Standard protocol," he said. "A soldier goes down, you cover the position." "You didn't know he was coming back," she said. "I've had this conversation," he said. "With Cade," she said. "I'm asking from a different position." She looked at him steadily. "You've read the briefings. You know what guardians are, what resurrection means, what the light provides. You understood it intellectually before the Cosmodrome." "Yes," he said. "And then you saw it," she said. "Yes," he said. "And now," she said. "Not intellectually, experientially. What is your assessment?" Chief considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "It changes the tactical calculus significantly," he said. "A force of guardians that can be resurrected maintains combat effectiveness past the point where a non-resurrecting force would be operationally degraded. The implications for sustained operations are—" "That's not what I asked," she said. He stopped. Ikora looked at him the way she had looked at him since the landing platform, the focused attention. That had been running hypotheses and testing them. The hypotheses had developed in the 31 hours since his arrival. He could see it in the quality of the attention more specific now. The generalized curiosity replaced by the targeted inquiry of someone who had narrowed the field. "What did you ask?" he said. "What it feels like," she said, "to watch someone die and come back from your specific position." She paused. "You've been fighting without the light's guarantee your entire career. Every soldier you've ever lost has stayed lost. Every death has been final." She paused again. "What does it feel like to watch that change?" Chief was quiet for a moment. The operational answer was available. He had the operational answer ready, and it was accurate, and it was also not what she was asking for, and he knew the difference. "Wrong," he said, briefly. He paused. "Not wrong in the sense of incorrect, wrong in the sense of disorienting. I've built my understanding of combat around the permanence of loss, what it costs. What it means to commit a soldier to an engagement, knowing the cost is real and final." He paused. Watching Briss come back disrupted that framework. "And now," she said, "I'm rebuilding the framework," he said, "with resurrection as a parameter. Does it make your soldiers' deaths less significant to you?" she said, "knowing the guardians come back?" "No," he said immediately. "Why not?" she said. He thought about this. "Because they're not my soldiers," he said, "and because I don't make the mistake of assuming that because something is possible here, it should be possible everywhere." He looked at her. "The fact that guardians can be resurrected doesn't change what loss means in contexts where resurrection isn't available. It changes what loss means here, in this specific context." He paused. "I keep the contexts separate. That's very disciplined," she said. "It's necessary," he said. "Yes," she said. "It is." She turned back to the display briefly, then back to him. "I want to ask you about something you said in the briefing, about extinction-level threats." "About the Forerunner?" "Yes," he said. "The Halo Array," she said. "You described it as a weapon fired to stop the spread of a parasite that consumed and converted biological life. A galaxy-wide sterilization." "Yes," he said. "The darkness," she said, "in our understanding, did something similar. Not identical. The darkness didn't consume biology. It unmade things, reduced them, took civilizations at their peak and collapsed them. She paused. But the shape is similar. A force that spreads through a galaxy and transforms or destroys what it encounters. Yes, he said. The shape is similar. The Forerunner built the array to stop the flood, she said. They killed everything that existed in the galaxy to deny the flood its food source. They sacrificed everything to stop something worse than the sacrifice. She paused. And they were right. Tactically, Chief said. They were right about the outcome. Whether the decision was right is a different question. What do you think? She said. He looked at her. I think the Forerunner had run out of other options, he said. I think the array was a last resort that became necessary because every alternative had been tried and had failed. I think the people who made the decision understood what it cost and made it anyway. He paused. I don't think it was a good decision. I think it was the least bad decision available in an impossible situation. The traveler made a decision like that, Ikora said. At the collapse, whatever it did to push back the darkness, it cost the traveler everything. It's been silent since. Inert. She looked at the window's direction without looking at the window. We've been waiting for it to wake up again for a long time. What do you expect when it does? He said. I don't know, she said. The speaker has interpretations. I have hypotheses. They don't always agree. She paused. What I know is that what's coming. She gestured at the display with its outer system data. Those objects. The signal you helped us resolve. Whatever is moving out there has moved before. It moved at the collapse. It moved before that, against civilizations we only know as ruins. She looked at him. I want to understand what we're facing before it arrives, not after. Yes, he said. The Forerunner, monitoring technology in your sensor package, she said. The calibration that lets you detect dimensional anomalies. I want to understand it better, not to replicate it. She paused. I don't think we could replicate it. But to understand what it's detecting, why it detects what it detects. She looked at him. Will you work with me on this? Yes, he said. Without clearing it with Zavala first, she said. He looked at her. Zavala will want the results, she said. He doesn't need to approve the process. You do this often, he said. The hidden operate independently, she said. It's how we're most effective. A pause. You can tell him, I asked. I'll tell him after, he said. The specific ghost of something that was not quite a smile crossed her face and departed. The signal strengthening rate, she said. I've run the analysis you suggested, using the rate of change in signal intensity to project the timeline. She pulled the display toward him. 6 months. Possibly as few as 4. Chief looked at the numbers. The Red Legion, she said. That's what my hidden are calling the Cabal forces on Mars. They're not just holding position, they're preparing. Whatever's coming, the Cabal know about it. They've been positioning for a specific response. What response? He said. We don't know yet, she said, which is why I've been running the analysis and why your sensor data was significant. She paused. The signal isn't just announcing arrival. There's a component in your data that I don't think you've identified yet. She highlighted a specific frequency range in the outer system readings. This carrier wave underneath the primary signal. Do you see it? He looked at the highlighted frequency. He had collected the data. He had processed it against his existing categories. He had not. He ran the reading again against the full sensor library, including the light-adjacent placeholder category. The carrier wave was in the light-adjacent category. It had been there since Venus. He had tagged it as null and moved on, because null values in the light-adjacent category were the consistent result, and he had not yet built the category enough to distinguish between different types of null. This null was different. It's not absence, he said slowly. The other null values, The light, the guardian abilities, the traveler, they're null, because my sensor library doesn't have a category for them. This is null because it's the inverse of the light, Ikora said, not the absence of the light, the opposite of it. She looked at him. We call it the darkness, the raw substrate of it, not the taken corruption, not the hive's sword logic, the thing underneath all of those. The actual signal. Chief looked at the carrier wave, at the specific frequency in his sensor data that he had collected since Venus and had tagged as null, and had not examined because he had not yet had the category to examine it with. The darkness had been in his sensor data since he arrived. He had been carrying it without knowing what he was carrying. How long has this signal been present in your system? He said. We don't know, Ikora said. We couldn't resolve it before your data gave us the reference point. She paused. But the strength of it suggests it didn't arrive recently. She paused again. It may have always been here, in the background, in the spaces between things. She looked at him. The traveler pushed the darkness back. It didn't eliminate it. Nothing eliminates it, Chief said. He said it with the certainty of someone who had fought extinction-level threats long enough to understand the specific truth that the things that operated at that scale didn't end. They withdrew and returned. You contain it. You push it back. It comes again. Yes, she said. The array bought 10,000 years, he said. What did the traveler's collapse action buy? Ikora looked at the signal on the display. Apparently, she said, about 700 years. The display ran its analysis. The carrier wave pulsed at its specific frequency in the background of everything. Chief looked at it. He thought about the grave mines. Argument. About the things that operated at the scale of extinction, saying words that were wrong and containing truths that were accurate. About the specific experience of fighting something that had a philosophy rather than just a purpose, and what it required to fight it without being consumed by the engagement with its ideas. The Vanguard needs to see this, he said. Yes, Ikora said. They do. She paused. After we understand it better. How long? He said. Tonight, she said. Give me tonight. Zavala will be in the briefing room at 0800, she said. I know his schedule. She turned back to the display. Come back at 0700. We'll go in together. Chief looked at the carrier wave, at the 6 to 4 month timeline, at the specific quality of a problem that was coming, regardless of what they did about it, but was coming into a base system that now had, at minimum, slightly better sensor resolution on what was coming. He stood. 0700, he said. 0700, she said. She was already back in the display. He left. In the corridor outside her workspace, the tower continued its operational tempo. Guardians moving through it, the specific sound of an installation that was always active, always running, the last safe city doing what it did. He walked back toward his quarters. The carrier wave frequency was in his sensor data. He ran it continuously on the way back, learning its shape, preparing to fight it. Section 6 Cade found him at 0430. Chief was on the tower's outer wall, not the public-facing observation deck, but the maintenance walkway that ran the wall's full perimeter below it, accessible through a maintenance hatch that his provisional access credentials technically permitted, and that nobody apparently used at 0430, because the maintenance walkway at 0430 was cold and offered no amenity except the view and the specific quality of being outside without being observed. He had been running the carrier wave analysis. Cade came through the maintenance hatch with the specific silence of someone who had grown up or developed, in whatever sense an exo developed in environments where silence was the difference between operational success and its alternative, He moved to stand beside Chief at the walkway's edge and looked at the city below without announcing his presence, which Chief had detected at the hatch's opening and had logged and had not responded to because Cade's approach pattern was not a threat pattern. They stood in silence for a while. The city, at 0430, had a different quality from the city at operational tempo. The lights were still on, all of them, always. The specific policy of a civilization that had decided that darkness was not something it would accept inside its perimeter. But the movement was different. Quieter. The specific quality of a place that was always awake and was currently awake at its minimum level. The traveler above it. Chief had been looking at the traveler for portions of the previous 6 hours. Not continuously. He had the carrier wave analysis running and the tactical briefings open and the Ikora workspace data being processed by the sensor package's background functions. But the traveler was visible from the maintenance walkway, and the traveler was significant. He was developing a category for significant. "You don't sleep," Cade said, eventually. "I sleep," Chief said. "Less than baseline humans. The augmentations reduced the requirement." "How much less?" Cade said. 90 minutes is sufficient, he said. "I took 90 minutes at 0200, and then you came out here," Cade said. "Yes," Chief said. Cade looked at the city. "I come out here sometimes," he said. "Not at 0430 usually, but sometimes." He paused. "It's good for the thinking that doesn't happen well in rooms." "Yes," Chief said. "What are you thinking about?" Cade said. Chief considered how to answer this accurately and usefully. "The carrier wave," he said. "Ikora's thing," Cade said. "The darkness signal." "You know about it," Chief said. "Ikora tells me things," Cade said. "Not everything. The things she decides I need to know." He paused. "She told me about the carrier wave this evening, after you left her workspace." Chief looked at him. "She trusts your judgment," Chief said. "About some things," Cade said. "The field things. The things that involve guardians going somewhere and doing something in a place where the something is complicated." He paused. "She doesn't trust my judgment about theoretical frameworks. She's right about that. I'm not a theoretical framework person." He looked at the traveler. "I'm a go there and do something person." "The Vex site," Chief said. "The reconnaissance operation you mentioned." "Yes," Cade said. "That's the one I want to talk to you about." He turned from the wall. "The carrier wave. Ikora thinks it's in the background of everything. Always been here. Pervasive." He paused. "The Vex have been studying it. Or something like it. The site I'm thinking about is a Vex installation on Nessus, a planetoid, in the outer system. The hidden have been watching it. The Vex activity there spiked significantly when your outer system data showed the signal strengthening. They're responding to the arrival," Chief said. "Maybe," Cade said. "Or they're responding to something in the carrier wave specifically. The Vex operate across time. They've seen futures we haven't. Whatever they're doing on Nessus, they know something about what's coming that we don't." He paused. "I want to know what they know." "How?" Chief said. "Vex networks," Cade said. "The Vex store information in distributed networks across their installations. 2. Code. Ghost can interface with Vex network architecture under the right conditions. It's technically horrifying, and she does not enjoy it, but she can do it." He paused. "The right conditions being that we get her physically inside a primary network node without the entire Vex installation becoming aware that we're there. Insertion and extraction," Chief said. "Yes," Cade said. "Small team. Fast. In before they know we're in. Out before they can respond." He paused. "I've done it before." "With varying results." "What kind of varying?" Chief said. "The kind where the varying was specifically about the extraction portion," Cade said. "The insertion has always worked. The extraction is where the Vex catch up with you." Chief looked at him. "You need someone who can hold a position during extraction," Chief said. I need someone who can hold a position during extraction while being shot at by a significant number of Vex, while Ghost is interfaced with the network and can't be interrupted, while the two people on perimeter are handling their own contacts. He paused. I need someone who is very good at that specific thing. Yes, Chief said. Yes, you'll come, Cade said. Or, yes, that's what I need. Both, Chief said. Cade looked at him for a moment. Just like that, he said. No, conditions. 1. No clearing it with Zavala. I'll tell Ikora, Chief said. She'll manage Zavala. She'll be furious, Cade said. Ikora, not Zavala. Zavala will just be concerned. Ikora will be furious because she wanted you for the 0700 briefing. The briefing will happen at 0800 with or without the reconnaissance data, Chief said. The reconnaissance data makes the briefing significantly more useful. Cade looked at him. You're doing the thing where you've already made the decision and you're building the case for it. Retroactively, he said. Chief looked at him. So am I, Cade said. I made this decision 6 hours ago, and I've been building the case since. He pushed off the wall. Good. Wheels up at 0530. I'll have the jump ship ready. Who else? Chief said. 2 hunters I trust, Cade said. And Sundance. He paused. Sundance is my ghost. She's going to have opinions about you. What kind of opinions? Chief said. The observational kind, Cade said. She's going to observe you continuously and vocalize the observations. He paused. She means well. Ghost behavior, Chief said. Specifically, Sundance behavior, Cade said. Other ghosts are more restrained. He turned toward the maintenance hatch. 0530. 0530, Chief said. Sundance had opinions. The jump ship from the tower to Nessus was 40 minutes, and Sundance spent 37 of them in the specific mode that Cade had predicted: continuous vocalized observation directed at Chief with the specific intensity of a ghost who had found something she couldn't fully categorize and had decided that extended observation was the resolution. Protocol. Your armor is self-sealing, she said. The polymer layers respond to breach events. That's similar to Guardian armor, but the mechanism is different. It's mechanical rather than light-assisted. A pause. How does it know where to seal? Distributed sensor nodes in the polymer layer detect atmospheric pressure differential, Chief said. The sealing compound activates automatically. Interesting, Sundance said. Our armor uses the light to maintain integrity. Guardians can fight in vacuum without a sealed suit if their light is strong enough. A pause. Can you fight in vacuum without a sealed suit? No, Chief said. So, if your armor breaches in vacuum, I patch it or I die, Chief said. Sundance was quiet for approximately 4 seconds. That seems very stressful, she said. It provides operational clarity, Chief said. What does that mean? She said. It means the consequences of failure are clear, Chief said, which focuses decision-making. Guardians know the consequences of failure too, Sundance said. We just come back, which changes the relationship with failure, Chief said. Does it? Sundance said. And she sounded genuinely uncertain. I've thought about this. Cade has died a significant number of times, more than most Guardians. He treats it differently than other Guardians do. More casually. A pause. But I don't think it means less to him. The individual instances. Another pause. He just processes them differently. Chief looked at Cade in the pilot's seat. Cade was running approach calculations with the specific focus of someone who had done this many times and still gave it full attention, because full attention was the thing that made the difference. Yes, Chief said. He does. How can you tell? Sundance said. He files things, Chief said. For later. Sundance processed this. That's what you do, she said. Yes, Chief said. Is later when you process them, she said. Eventually, Chief said. Sundance was quiet for a moment. That was longer than her usual intervals. I'm sorry, you don't have a ghost, she said. She'd said this before, in the ruins on Venus, and the quality of it was identical. The specific, sincere apology of something that understood what the absence meant and didn't have a useful response to it, but felt the absence required acknowledgement anyway. Chief looked at the ghost, at the single eye tracking him with its continuous assessment, at the small geometric body hovering at operational proximity to Cade, the way Cortana had occupied a certain position in his neural interface present, nearby, running functions that supported the person it was paired with. I had something equivalent, he said. Sundance went still. Had? She said. Yes, he said. She was quiet. I'm sorry, she said. The same sincerity, different weight. Yes, he said. Cade said, from the pilot's seat, without turning, Nessus, in 10. Everyone check your loadouts. Sundance moved back to Cade's shoulder. Chief checked his loadout. Nessus was wrong, in a specific way. Not the atmospheric wrongness of a hostile environment, or the tactical wrongness of a position under fire. The specific wrongness of a world that had been worked on. The planetoid's surface showed the Vex's specific relationship with geography, not conquering it, integrating it. The rock and the Vex architecture merged into something that was neither geology nor construction, but a third category specific to the Vex. The networks of patterned stone. The pools of radiolarian fluid that the briefings had described as the Vex's biological medium. The liquid in which Vex minds floated and through which Vex networks transmitted. From the air, the installation was large. On the ground, it was larger. Primary network node is 300 meters in, Cade said, moving fast from the landing point. The two hunters, Isel and Tamaro, experienced economical with everything including words, were on the flanks. Chief was at Cade's right. The node chamber has 4 access points. We seal 3, hold 1. Ghost goes in. Timeline for network interface. Chief said. Sundance says 8 minutes, Cade said. Historically, she's said 8 minutes and taken 11. I'm right here, Sundance said. She's accurate on the 8 minutes about 40% of the time, Cade continued. Plan for 11. I heard that, Sundance said. Plan for 15, Chief said. Cade looked at him. Conservatively, Chief said. Plan for 15. Cade agreed. They went in. The Vex response came at minute 4. Not the patrol contacts that Chief had expected and prepared for something faster. The specific response of a network that had detected an intrusion and was routing resources toward the intrusion point from multiple directions simultaneously. The Vex's specific tactical characteristic of existing in multiple locations at once, making their response to a detected intrusion look like materialization rather than movement. They were simply there, in volume, where they hadn't been. Chief held the position. Cade and the 2 hunters were managing contacts on 3 sides. Chief had the node chamber's primary access point, the largest of the 4, the direction from which the highest volume of Vex response was arriving. He had the MA5D at full auto and the M6H for close contacts, and the combat knife for the contacts that got closer than the M6H was ideal for. The Vex came and kept coming, the specific operational challenge of a force that existed across time was that attrition didn't function the same way. You could reduce the number of Vex in your immediate vicinity to 0 and have that number restored from a different timeline supply within seconds. The MA5D's ammunition was not infinite. The Vex's supply was effectively so. He managed it with positioning. The node chamber's access point had a geometry that he could use a choke point, the specific gift of an architecture that hadn't been designed for the tactical situation it was currently hosting. He put himself in the choke point and made the choke point expensive, And the Vex came through it anyway, because the Vex didn't have an operational relationship with expensive. Minute 7, minute 9. How long? He said, to Sundance. 2 more minutes, Sundance said. Her voice had the specific quality it hadn't had on the jumpship focused, the observational mode completely absent. The full capability directed at the network interface with the intensity of something that was doing something technically horrifying and doing it as fast as it could. 2 minutes, he said. He held the position. Minute 11, Cade was beside him, the 2 hunters having compressed the perimeter. Cade moving to the primary access point to add his hand cannon to the suppression. Ghost, Cade said. Almost, Sundance said. Minute 12, she said. Got it. 8. Ghost. Extraction. They moved. The extraction was the varying part. Cade had been accurate about the extraction. The Vex response had been building for 12 minutes and had reached a volume that made the path back to the landing point a different calculation than the path in. Chief ran the calculation in the 3 seconds of movement before the first contact and found the calculation acceptable. Not comfortable. Acceptable. They moved fast through a significant number of Vex contacts that Chief suppressed in the choke points the architecture provided, and that Cade and the hunters suppressed elsewhere, and that Sundance categorized by type and location in real time in a running commentary that was operationally useful and continuous. The jumpship was where they'd left it. They got on it. Cade had the engines running before Chief had cleared the hatch. The jumpship was in the air before the hatch finished closing. The Vex below them were still there, still arriving, still routing resources toward the position that was no longer occupied. Orbital insertion. Stars. Sundance, Cade said. What did we get? Significant data, Sundance said. She had returned from the focused mode to the observational mode, the transition instant, the specific capability of something that could run multiple operational states simultaneously and switch between them without residual effect. The Vex on Nessus have been modeling the darkness's arrival for a very long time, across multiple timelines. She paused. 1. They've identified the optimal response. What is it? Chief said. Surrender, Sundance said. The jumpship was quiet. They've run every possible timeline, Sundance said. Every response, every resistance, every tactical and strategic option, and, in the overwhelming majority of simulated futures, the optimal outcome is achieved by allowing the darkness to arrive and not resisting. They're going to let it in, Cade said. In the future, they've modeled, Sundance said. Yes, and in the future where you resist, Chief said. Worse outcomes, Sundance said. In the Vex's models? In the majority of resistance timelines, the darkness achieves its objective anyway, and the resistance has cost additional losses. She paused. In a small number of timelines, the resistance succeeds. How small, Chief said. Sundance was quiet for a moment. Very, she said. But non-zero, Chief said. Yes, she said. Non-zero. Chief looked at the stars through the jumpship's viewport, at the darkness between them. The Vex optimizes for the most probable outcome, he said. They've modeled this across every available future, and they're choosing the action that produces the best result in the most timelines. Yes, Sundance said. The question is whether the most probable outcome is the one worth optimizing for, he said. Cade was looking at him from the pilot's seat. The small number of timelines where resistance succeeds, Chief said. Are they worth pursuing at the cost of worse outcomes in the majority? That's a philosophical question, Sundance said. Yes, Chief said. It is. Cade turned back to the viewport. The stars ran past them. I know which one I'm in, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. So do I. The jumpship accelerated toward the tower. Behind them, Nessus continued its work across its timelines, optimizing for the most probable future. Arranging itself for the arrival it had already decided was inevitable. Chief watched it recede through the viewport. The carrier wave pulsed at its background frequency in his sensor data. He watched it and ran. Section 7. The 0800 briefing happened at 0900. The hour's delay was Ikora's. She had been in her workspace when Chief and Cade returned from Nessus at 0712, and she had received the Sundance data, and she had looked at Chief with the specific expression of someone who had prepared a thorough presentation and had just been handed information that required the presentation to be rebuilt from its foundation while the audience waited outside. She had done it in 47 minutes. Chief had watched the rebuild happen through the workspace window, not intrusively. The window was glass, and the workspace was visible from the corridor, and Ikora had not closed the blinds, which he read as implicit permission. She worked the way he worked, in the high-tempo problem-solving mode, fast, no wasted motion, the specific economy of someone who had been doing complex intellectual work long enough that the complex intellectual work had its own musculature. Cade had used the 47 minutes to eat. Zavala had used them to stand. Outside the briefing room, in the specific stillness of a commander practicing patience that he was not experiencing naturally. At 0847, Ikora opened her workspace door and said, "We're ready." The speaker was in the briefing room. Chief hadn't met him yet. The speaker occupied a specific position in the tower's social architecture that was adjacent to the Vanguard's authority without being part of its chain of command, the specific relationship of a spiritual advisor to a broad military organization, the authority granted by interpretation rather than rank. He was old. Not the specific old of someone who had lived a long biological life, something else. The old of someone who had been in a position of sustained responsibility for long enough that the responsibility had become their primary physical characteristic. He wore a white mask. He was looking at Chief when Chief entered, not the Vanguard's various forms of assessment. Something older than assessment, the specific quality of a person who interpreted things professionally, encountering something they were not certain they could interpret. "The speaker," Ikora said. He asked to be present. Chief nodded. The speaker said nothing. They sat. Ikora ran the briefing. She began with Chief's sensor data, the outer system objects, the signal strengthening timeline, the 4 to 6 month projection. Zavala received this with the expression he'd had since Chief arrived, the controlled register of a commander processing threat-level information. Cade received it with the expression he'd had since the maintenance walkway at 0430, the Delight filed. The thing underneath it, present. Then the carrier wave. "The darkness signal isn't arriving with the objects," Ikora said. "It's already here. It's been here." Chief sensor data let us isolate a background frequency that we'd been unable to resolve a carrier wave running at the substrate level of everything in this system. She paused. "This is consistent with historical accounts of the collapse. The darkness doesn't announce itself. It's ambient, present, before the arrival. What arrives is not the darkness itself, but its concentrated expression." "The ships," Zavala said. "The pyramid ships," Ikora said. "Yes. What's the difference between the ambient darkness and the concentrated expression?" Zavala said. "Scale and intent," Ikora said. "The ambient carrier wave is passive. It's present, the way radiation is present, without targeting. The concentrated expression has direction, has a purpose." She paused. "The pyramid ships are weapons. The carrier wave is the environment that makes them effective. Can we disrupt the carrier wave?" Zavala said. "Unknown," Ikora said. "The light pushes back against it. That's what the Traveler did at the collapse. Introduced a counter-frequency, strong enough to temporarily suppress the darkness's concentrated expression. Whether we can replicate that without the traveler's active participation, it won't participate, the speaker said. His first words since the briefing began. The voice of a man who had been interpreting the traveler's silence for decades and had opinions about what the silence meant. Not currently, Ikora said carefully. No, then we work with what we have, Zavala said. His command, register the specific decisiveness of a man who had made peace with fighting at a disadvantage long ago and found that peace tactical rather than philosophical. There's something else, Cade said. He looked at Chief. Tell them about the Vex. Chief told them about the Vex. The Nessus data, the timeline modeling, the optimal response the Vex had identified across every simulated future, the surrender option, the small number of resistance timelines, the specific mathematics of a civilization that had computed the most probable outcome and was arranging itself to accept it. The briefing room was very quiet when he finished. The speaker was looking at him. The Vex have calculated that resistance fails in the majority of futures, Zavala said, not a question processing. Yes, Chief said, and you've chosen the minority, Zavala said. I don't optimize for probability, Chief said. I optimize for the outcome I'm willing to accept. He paused. The Vex are looking at every possible future and choosing the one that minimizes their total loss. That's a valid strategic approach. It's not the one I use. What approach do you use? Zavala said. Chief thought about this. I identify the outcome I'm unwilling to accept, he said. And I find the path that avoids it, regardless of probability. He paused. The flood was assessed as unbeatable by civilizations more advanced than mine. The Forerunner fired the Halo array because they ran the same calculation the Vex ran and reached the same conclusion. The flood was still stopped. He paused. The calculation was right about the probability. It was wrong about the outcome. How? Ikora said. Because it didn't account for the variable that chose the minority timeline anyway, Chief said. Probability models assume rational actors optimizing for expected outcomes. When you have an actor that doesn't optimize for expected outcomes, the model's predictions fail. He paused. The Vex model has the same gap. We're the gap, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. The speaker spoke again. In the Traveler's long history, he said, there has always been a force that chose the minority timeline, a person who looked at the calculation and refused its conclusion. He paused. The Traveler has always found them, has always moved toward them. He was looking at Chief. It moved toward humanity because it saw in us the specific capacity to reject a calculation. Chief looked at the speaker. The Traveler moved toward humanity, specifically, Chief said. Yes, the speaker said, because humanity chose to resist things that should have been unresistible, Chief said. Yes, the speaker said. And then, the bad Traveler's action at the collapse left it. Chief looked at the window's direction, inert, silent, and unable to continue that support. Yes, the speaker said. And guardians were created, Chief said. To continue the work without the Traveler's active participation, the light chose us, the speaker said, each guardian. The ghost finds the person in whom the light sees the specific capacity to choose the minority timeline, Chief said. The speaker was quiet. Yes, he said. In the way I would have said it, the capacity to carry the light's hope forward, but yes, he paused. Your framing is more direct. What does the Traveler see in me? Chief said. The speaker looked at him for a long time. I don't know, he said. You don't carry the light. You came through a Vex gate from a universe that the Traveler has no record of. You shouldn't be here. He paused. And yet your sensor data gave us what we needed to resolve the carrier wave. Your data on the Vex's timeline modeling gives us the specific information we needed about the darkness's approach. He paused again. In my experience, things that shouldn't be here and that nevertheless provide exactly what is needed at the moment it is needed are not accidental. Everything has a purpose in your framework. Chief said. Yes, the speaker said. That's not a framework I use. Chief said. No, the speaker said. I can see that. He paused. What framework do you use? Chief thought about this. Available resources applied to the necessary objective. He said, purpose is a conclusion, not a premise. I don't ask why something is available. I assess what it can do, and I use it. And what can you do? The speaker said. The genuine question, not the philosophical version, the operational one. Detect what you can't detect, Chief said. Hold positions that need holding. Fight things that need fighting. He paused. Recognize the shape of extinction-level threats and apply 30 years of operational experience fighting them. He paused. And choose the minority timeline regardless of the calculation. The speaker looked at him for a long moment. Yes, he said. That is what you can do. Zavala looked at Chief. The specific look of a commander making a decision that had been building since a landing platform and had reached the point where further delay was its own kind of development. Decision. The taken situation in the exclusion zone on the Dreadnought's debris field, he said. Ikora's Hidden has been trying to establish a monitoring position for 6 weeks. The taken density has prevented it. He paused. I want you on the fire team. Yes, Chief said. It's a darkness zone, Ikora said. The light functions at reduced capacity. Guardians are diminished, Chief said. Yes, she said. You won't be diminished. Your sensor capability will function at full capacity in a space where ours is significantly reduced. She paused. That's why Zavala wants you there. I know, Chief said. Cade leaned back in his chair. I want to come, he said. No, Zavala said. I'm the Hunter Vanguard, Cade said. Darkness zones are specifically a hunter operational domain. I have experience. You have experienced dying in darkness zones, Zavala said. Dying and coming back, Kaide said. Which is the point? The point, Zavala said, is that Chief functions at full capacity in a darkness zone, and I want to understand what that looks like operationally before I commit significant Guardian resources to the exclusion zone operation. He looked at, end quote. Chief. Small team. Ikora leads. I'm not a field commander, Ikora said. You're the Warlock Vanguard, Zavala said. I'm going, Cade said. Zavala looked at him. Cade looked back. The specific negotiation of 2 people who had been doing this for long enough that the negotiation had found its equilibrium. You're not leading, Zavala said. Ikora leads, Cade said. I'll follow. A pause. Mostly, Zavala looked at Chief. Can you manage him? He said. Chief looked at Cade. Cade looked at Chief with the expression that was always running at its lowest level. The delight. The warmth underneath the delight. I'll work with what's available, Chief said. Cade made the sound adjacent to a laugh. I like him, he said. I keep saying it. You keep saying it, Zavala confirmed. Because I keep being right, Cade said. The briefing room held the specific quality of a group of people who had received significant threat-level information and had processed it to the point of action and were now in the transition between the processing and the doing. Chief looked at the display. At the carrier wave frequency running in the background of the sensor data. At the 4 confirmed objects moving through the outer system, dark. At the solar system's color-coded threat assessment with its significant amounts of red. At the small number in the background. Vex model's output, the non-zero number, the minority timeline. He was in it. He had always been in it. He looked at the people around the table, the Vanguard, the speaker, the specific assembly of a civilization's best response to an impossible calculation, and felt the specific quality of a place where the work mattered and the people doing it understood that. He didn't say this. Nobody needed him to say it. The tower knew what it was. The dreadnought's debris field was wrong in a way that the sensor package could measure. Not qualitatively wrong, quantitatively. The carrier wave that Chief had been monitoring since Ikora had identified it ran at a specific background intensity throughout the solar system that he had now established as baseline. In the debris field, the intensity was not baseline. It was elevated by a factor that Mjolnir's sensors rendered as a specific number, and that the specific number meant the darkness was not ambient here the way it was ambient elsewhere. It was concentrated. The dreadnought. Oryx's ship, the briefings, had described it. The physical vessel of the taken king, who had been dead for months and whose death had left a power vacuum in the taken hierarchy, and whose ship remained in the solar system because ships the size of small moons did not have easy disposal. Solutions had been the concentrated expression of the darkness's specific theological implementation in this system. The ship was dead. The theology was not. The debris field was what remained when something that had been generating a concentrated darkness signal stopped generating it, but left its residual physics behind. Like heat after a fire had gone out. Like radiation after a weapon had been detonated. Like the specific atmospheric quality of a place where something had happened that the place had not yet finished processing. The jumpship deposited them on a stable debris section large enough to use as a landing point, a chunk of the dreadnought's outer hull. The specific material of hive construction, which was not quite stone and not quite bone, and was something that the sensor package produced readings for, that it filed in the biological but not category, adjacent to the flood biomass category, but different. The specific distinction of a biology that had been optimized for different purposes. Ikora landed first. She stood on the hull section and looked at the debris field, and Chief watched her assess it the way she assessed everything. Completely. Hypotheses running. She had her armor's hood up, and the specific stillness that he had associated with warlocks in general and Ikora, specifically the stillness of someone whose primary activity was internal and whose external presentation reflected the internal work. Cade landed beside her and looked at the debris field with a different quality of assessment, tactical, spatial, the rapid reading of a hunter finding the paths and the positions. The two guardians Zavala had assigned for an additional perimeter, another warlock named Kress, and a titan named Ofu, completed the preth. Team 5. Chief ran a full sensor sweep before anyone moved. Take signatures, he said. Dense. Concentrated in the debris field's interior sections. He highlighted the positions on Mjolnir's tactical display, the specific dimensional displacement readings that the Taken produced. The secondary signature that he'd identified in the Cosmodrome and had been refining his detection capability on since. 11 confirmed positions. 11 confirmed positions. More probable in the deeper sections. 11, Ikora said. Confirmed, he said. The debris field's geometry is limiting resolution in the interior. The number should be treated as a lower bound. The monitoring position Zavala wants is in the interior, Ikora said. Yes, Chief said. Approximately 300 meters in, through 11 confirmed positions, Cade said. And whatever's in the deeper sections, Chief said. Cade looked at the debris field. Great, he said. Let's go. The darkness zone effect was visible in the Guardians before they were 20 meters in. Not dramatic, the specific gradual quality of a system losing access to a resource rather than having it. Cut. The light worked at a frequency that Chief's sensor package logged differently from the carrier wave, not the inverse frequency that the carrier wave represented, but a distinct signal. Something that he was building a category for, in the same way he'd built the light adjacent category, the light active category, the specific readings that the Guardian's subclass abilities produced when they were running. In the darkness zone, the light active readings diminished. Not to zero, the briefings had been accurate about that. The darkness zone reduced rather than eliminated the light, but reduced significantly. Cress's warlock abilities, which had been running at a specific baseline output since departure, were now running at approximately 60% of that baseline. Ofu's Titan Barrier ability, which Chief had logged as a potential tactical resource during the briefing, was at 50%. Ikora was 70%. Cade was at 85%. "You're reading us," Cade said. He said it without accusation, the observation of someone who had detected the observation and found it interesting rather than invasive. "Yes," Chief said. "Your light output. I've been building a sensor category for it since Venus." "How are we doing?" Cade said. "Reduced," Chief said. Cade at 85%. Ikora at 70%. "I'm usually higher than Cade in non-darkness conditions," Ikora said. "I know," Chief said. "Hunters maintain light output better in darkness zones." The briefings mentioned it. "The sensor data confirms it." "What about you?" Ikora said. "My capabilities are not light-dependent," Chief said. "They're mechanical and biological. The darkness zone has no measurable effect on Mjolnir's systems or my augmentations." "That's what Zavala wanted to confirm," Ikora said. "Yes," Chief said. "He was right to want to confirm it." "He usually is," she said. About the operational things. They moved. The first taken contact was a taken night. Chief had the most data on knights from the Hive briefings. The Hive's warrior caste, large, heavily armored, carrying weapons that fired compressed void energy and that the briefings described as significantly dangerous at close range. The taken version retained the base biology and added the specific modifications, the blink behavior, the autonomous operation. The absence of the Taken King's directing will be replaced by whatever residual autonomy the Taken developed when their directing intelligence was removed. It was positioned in a debris corridor that the tactical path required passing through. Chief took it from 200 meters with the BR-85, 3 rounds. The knight's armor absorbed the first. The second found the joint at the neck. The third confirmed the first two's work. The knight dissipated. No alert. The debris field's geography had absorbed the sound. "You shoot like a gunslinger," Cade said, quietly, the operational register. "Precision is a force multiplier," Chief said, "especially when stealth is a priority." "You know what a gunslinger is," Cade said. "Hunter, subclass," Chief said. "Solar, light. Precision shots as primary mechanic." He paused. "The briefings were thorough. You read all of them," Cade said. "Yes," Chief said. "Even the subclass briefings," Cade said. "I wanted to understand what I was working with," Chief said. Cade looked at him. "Ikora gave you subclass briefings," he said. "She doesn't do that for most people." "I asked for them," Chief said. Cade made the specific sound that was adjacent to a laugh. They moved deeper. The monitoring position was in a cavity in the dreadnought hull material, a natural formation in the debris, a concave section that provided 360 concealment and a direct line of sensor sight to the taken activity in the deeper debris sections. The briefings had identified it as the optimal position for a persistent monitoring installation. The 6 previous attempts to establish the installation had been disrupted by taken contact before the equipment could be placed. Chief cleared the approach, not the fireteam chief. Ikora had raised the question of team engagement versus single operator approach during the transit, and Chief had made the case for single operator based on the specific reasoning that one operator produced one detection signature, and the Taken's dimensional displacement sensors, whatever they were presumably optimized to detect Guardian signatures rather than the specific signature of a 2-meter-plus super soldier in Mjolnir who did not produce a light reading. The reasoning was sound. Ikora had agreed. Cade had wanted to come anyway, and Ikora had said no, and Cade had looked at Chief, and Chief had looked back, and Cade had stayed. He moved through the approach in the silence that Mjolnir's dampening systems produced, not complete silence. The armor's mass was always present in the specific vibrations of footfall, but the specific reduction in acoustic signature that the suit's design had optimized for. The taken in the approach corridor were positioned for detection of light-bearing entities. He was not a light-bearing entity. He passed the first two without contact. The third was positioned differently, not the standard patrol position angled, the orientation suggesting a detection methodology that was not the standard taken sensor sweep, angled toward the approach path specifically, as if it had been positioned to detect something that wasn't a guardian. He stopped. The carrier wave in the debris field was stronger than baseline, significantly stronger than outside. And the Taken here had been in the darkness zone for months, since the Taken King's death, since the Dreadnought's systems went dark. They had been operating in a concentrated darkness environment for months, without the Taken King's direction. Without direction, but not without the darkness. The darkness was present here, at a concentration that produced. He ran the sensor data against the carrier wave analysis he'd been building with Ikora's help, produced enough substrate saturation that the Taken's residual connection to the darkness's ambient signal was potentially functional as a detection mechanism. The Taken might be able to feel the carrier wave's disruption. The carrier wave's disruption that Mjolnir produced. Not a light signature, the inverse. His sensors detecting the darkness detecting his sensors detecting it. He reassessed. Alternate approach. 3 minutes longer. 2 additional Taken contacts, requiring elimination. Acceptable. He went the long way. The installation took 4 minutes. The equipment was compact. Ikora's design, the specific engineering of someone who had been solving field problems for a long time and had learned that compact and reliable outperformed sophisticated and fragile environments like this one. Chief placed it in the cavity's optimal position, confirmed the sensor alignment against Mjolnir's tactical display, and activated it. The monitoring installation went live and immediately produced data. The data was significant. The Taken activity in the deeper debris sections was not the leaderless patrol behavior that the previous strike team reports had described. It was organized. Not the Taken King's organization, something more recent, the specific pattern of an emergent leadership, rather than a directed one. Something was directing the Taken in the deeper debris sections, and the direction was recent, and the direction had a specific vector toward the monitoring installation's position, toward the cavity in the dreadnought hull. Material. Toward him. Ikora, he said, quietly, the operational register. I see it, she said. She was receiving the installation's feed in real time. The organized pattern, how recent. Onset correlates with the signal strengthening in the outer system. He said, the Taken's residual darkness connection is responding to the incoming signal. As the signal strengthens, their autonomous organization increases. He paused. They're not leaderless. The incoming pyramid signal is functionally directing them. The darkness is leading them, Ikora said. The carrier wave is the command structure, he said. The Taken King was the local implementation. Remove the local implementation. The carrier wave still functions. He paused. Tease. They've been waiting for the signal to reach sufficient strength to provide direction, and it has, Ikora said. Yes, he said. How many? She said. He looked at the monitoring installation's data, at the organized pattern in the deeper sections, at the specific number that the sensor sweep was resolving as the installation's range extended. More than 11, he said. He began his return to the team's position. Behind him, the monitoring installation ran its sweep. The carrier wave pulsed at elevated intensity in the deeper sections of the Dreadnought's debris field. The Taken moved with new direction, not the Taken King's theology, not the leaderless autonomy of the months since his death. Something older, something that had always been the foundation of what Oryx had built his theology upon. The darkness finding its instruments, preparing for its arrival. Cade met him at the approach corridor's exit. "I stayed," Cade said, just noting that. "Yes," Chief said. "You did." Ikora's expression when she saw the data, Cade said. "That's not an expression I've seen on her before." "No," Chief said. "How bad?" Cade said. Chief looked at him, at the hand cannon with the filed trigger guard, at the expression that ran the delight over the surface of the thing underneath. "The darkness is already directing the Taken," Chief said. "The pyramid ships haven't arrived. The signal is sufficient to organize them." End quote. He paused. "When the ships arrive, the signal will be stronger." "How much stronger?" Cade said. "Unknown," Chief said. "Significantly." Cade absorbed this with the specific quality he brought to significant information completely, without performance. The thing underneath the delight, receiving it at full resolution. "Then, we'd better be ready," he said. "Yes," Chief said. "Are we?" Cade said. Chief thought about this. "Honestly, no," he said. "Not yet." "Can we be?" Cade said. Chief thought about the flood, about the halo array, about the specific history of impossible things being done anyway by people who had refused the calculation. "I don't know," he said, "but we can be more ready than we are now." "That's enough," Cade said. "Yes," Chief said. "One. It usually is." Cade looked at the debris field, at the dreadnought hull material and the carrier wave running through it at elevated intensity, and the Taken in the deeper sections organizing themselves for something that hadn't arrived yet. "I have a question," Cade said. "Yes," Chief said. "In your universe," Cade said, "the flood, the halo array, 30 years of fighting things that should have won." He paused. "Did it feel like this?" Chief considered the question. "Yes," he said, "most of the time." "How did you keep going?" Cade said. Chief thought about the maintenance walkway at 0430, about Cortana's absence in the neural interface, about the specific discipline of filing things for later, and the specific knowledge that later sometimes didn't arrive, and the filing was all there was, one objective at a time. He said, "The next thing, then the thing after that." Cade nodded. "Yeah," he said. "That's it." They went back to the team. The monitoring installation ran its sweep above the debris field in the direction of the outer system. The carrier wave pulsed toward its source. Still approaching, still patient, still coming. The signal was resolved on a Tuesday. Chief had been in the tower for 19 days when Ikora's workspace display produced the reading that the previous 18 days of analysis had been building toward the carrier wave's specific oscillation pattern, shifting from the ambient background pulse to something directed. The specific change of a signal that had been broadcasting generally, beginning to broadcast specifically at the solar system, specifically on Earth. He was in the workspace when it happened. He had been spending 4 hours each morning in Ikora's workspace running the sensor data against her models, the collaboration having developed the specific efficiency of two people who worked well together and had found the working rhythm without discussing it. The rhythm was, Chief provided sensor data, Ikora provided theoretical framework. They ran the data against the framework in parallel and compared results, and neither of them performed the comparison or made it social. It worked. "There," Ikora said. Chief saw it at the same moment. The directed quality, the shift from ambient to targeted, the specific physics of a signal that had been running for longer than human civilization and had just acquired an address, timeline. He said, The rate of change. She ran it. Weeks, not months. She looked at the display. The outer system objects have changed velocity. They're accelerating. They know we detected them, Chief said. Or they don't care, she said. Chief thought about the flood. About the specific operational posture of something that had never needed to care about detection because detection had never materially affected the outcome. The grave mind had known exactly where Chief was at every point in their engagement, and the knowing had not been a disadvantage to the grave mind because the grave mind's confidence in the outcome hadn't required concealment. Or they don't care, he said. The full Vanguard assembled within the hour. Zavala had the controlled register running at maximum, the specific compression of a man who had been preparing for this moment, for his entire command tenure, and was now in the moment and was applying everything the preparation had built. Ikora presented the data. Chief watched the room receive it. The speaker received it with the specific quality of someone confirming something they had known was coming and had spent a long time deciding how to hold. He looked at the traveler's direction when Ikora put the timeline numbers on the display, and his expression had the quality of a conversation he was having internally that nobody in the room was party to. Cade received it with the expression Chief knew now, the thing underneath the delight, fully present, the delight not gone, but no longer the primary register. Zavala received it by immediately asking operational questions. The taken organization in the debris field, he said. The carrier wave directed them. If the signal strengthens as the pyramid ships approach, the taken became more organized, Ikora said, more directed. The darkness is effectively using them as a forward presence, softening the system's defenses before the primary force arrives. Like an advanced unit, Zavala said. Yes, Chief said. Zavala looked at him. Your experience with the flood, Zavala said. The advanced dynamics, the way it prepared a system before the primary engagement. The flood used infected hosts as a forward presence, Chief said, spreading infection ahead of the primary gravemind engagement. The taken serves an equivalent function here, existing presence, already positioned, directed by a signal that predates the physical arrival. He paused. The difference is, the taken can't spread their condition to new hosts the way the flood could. The taken king is dead. New taken requires a source, but the existing taken, Zavala said, are sufficient to significantly degrade system defenses before the pyramid ships arrive, Chief said. If they're organized and directed, and we're responding to the taken rather than preparing for the pyramids, they're a distraction, Cade said. They're a distraction that will kill significant numbers of guardians while we're distracted, Chief said, which reduces our capability for primary engagement. He paused. The correct response is to not let them be a distraction. How? Zavala said. Resolve the taken situation before the signal strengthens further, Chief said. Not suppress resolve. Find what the carrier wave is using as its local anchor in the debris field and disrupt it. Remove the darkness's ability to direct the existing taken, and they revert to autonomous operation. He paused. Leaderless taken are a known quantity. The city has been managing them for months. Directed taken is a different operational problem. The local anchor, Ikora said. She was already at the display. There's something in the debris field's deeper sections that my hidden hasn't been able to reach. The monitoring installation's data suggests a concentrated darkness signal source in the dreadnought's inner hull. She paused. Not the ship's systems. The ship is dead. Oh. Something that was in the ship when it was alive and has remained active. Oryx Throne World, Chief said. Everyone looked at him. The briefings described the hive's Throne World architecture, he said. Oryx had a pocket dimension, a space adjacent to this one that served as his power source. He's dead. The Throne World may not be. He paused. If the throne world's dimensional aperture is still open and the carrier wave is using it as an anchor point, it's a permanent darkness installation in the middle of the debris field, Ikora said. Yes, Chief said. Can it be closed? Zavala said. Unknown, Chief said. I don't have sufficient data on Hive Throne world mechanics to assess closure options. He looked at Ikora. You do. She was running the analysis. Theoretically, she said. The throne world's aperture was maintained by Oryx's power. His death destabilized it. The carrier wave may be sustaining it in his absence, using it as a convenient existing dimensional structure rather than creating a new one. She paused. If we disrupt the carrier wave's connection to the aperture closes, Chief said. Possibly, she said. Or destabilizes further. The outcome is uncertain. What's the approach? Zavala said. Team insertion to the aperture's location, Ikora said. Using Chief's carrier wave detection capability to navigate to the specific point where the connection is strongest, disrupting the connection at that point. She paused. With tools that I don't currently have. What tools? Zavala said. Something that operates at the carrier wave's frequency, she said, to introduce interference at the connection point. She paused. Something the darkness doesn't have a defense against. The light, Chief said. Ikora looked at him. The carrier wave is the inverse of the light, he said. In the darkness zone, the light is diminished because the carrier wave suppresses it. The relationship runs both ways. The light should suppress the carrier wave at sufficient intensity. He paused. A concentrated light application at the aperture's connection point. A nova bomb, Ikora said. Or equivalent. She paused. In a darkness zone. At diminished capacity. Yes, Chief said. My light output in the debris field was 70%, she said. A nova bomb at 70% capacity may be sufficient, Chief said, or may not. The uncertain outcome problem again. I don't love uncertain outcomes, Cade said. They're the available kind, Chief said. Cade looked at him. There's a second element, Chief said. The nova bomb disrupts the connection. Someone has to hold the aperture's position while the disruption runs. Prevent the taken from interfering with the process. He paused. In a darkness zone, at diminished guardian capacity. That's the position you hold, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. While Ikora charges a nova bomb at 70% capacity, Cade said. While Ikora charges the nova bomb, Chief said. And while the taken who are being directed by the carrier wave attempt to prevent the disruption. How many taken? Cade said. The monitoring installation's count when I placed it was in excess of 11 confirmed, Chief said. Since then, the signal has strengthened, and the organization has increased. The current count is, he checked the installation's continuous feed. 37 confirmed. 37, Cade said. In the deeper sections, Chief said. Cade. And not all of them will be positioned at the aperture. How many at the aperture? Cade said. Unknown, Chief said. It's the most significant asset in the area. I would position a significant force there. You'd position everything there, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. Cade looked at the display. I'm coming, he said. Yes, Chief said. Zavala, Cade said, not asking. Zavala looked at the display for a long moment. Full strike team, he said. Not a fire team. Strike team. The debris field geometry limits approach vectors, Chief said. A large force produces more detection signatures. The insertion that matters is the final approach to the aperture. That approach should be small. How small? Zavala said. Chief thought about the geometry, about carrier wave detection, about the darkness zone's effect on guardian capability, and what small team tactics could accomplish with diminished light against 37 organized taken. 3, he said. Ikora for the nova bomb. Cade, for approach and perimeter. Myself for the holding position. 3, Zavala said, with a larger force establishing a perimeter at the debris field's entrance, Chief said. To prevent reinforcement and secure extraction. That I can approve, Zavala said. The 3-person approach to the aperture, Chief said. That I need you to approve as well. Zavala looked at him, the specific look of a commander who had been managing the calculus of acceptable risk for his entire career and was running the calculation one more time. If the carrier wave connection is disrupted, he said, the Taken revert to autonomous operation. Yes, Chief said. And the pyramid ships lose their forward presence, he said. Their direct forward presence, Chief said. The Taken still exists. They're still a threat. But an undirected threat is a known quantity. And if the disruption doesn't work, Zavala said. Chief thought about this. Then we've traded 3 operators for data on what doesn't work, he said, which informs the next approach. That's a cold assessment, Zavala said. Yes, Chief said. Do you assess yourself that way? Zavala said. As a tradable asset, Chief looked at him. Yes, he said. Every operator in every engagement is a resource with a cost and a potential return, including me. He paused. The difference is, I make the assessment without the light's guarantee that the cost is recoverable. Zavala was quiet for a moment. That's why you covered Briss, he said. Chief looked at him. Cade told me, Zavala said. Yes, Chief said. That's why. Zavala looked at the display for a long time. At the carrier wave directed toward Earth. At the pyramid ships accelerate in the outer system. At the timeline that had contracted from months to weeks. Approved, he said. 3 people approach. Full strike team perimeter. He looked at Chief. You brief the strike team. 1,600 today. We will move at 0600 tomorrow. Yes, Chief said. And Chief? Zavala said. Chief looked at him. Come back, Zavala said. All 3 of you. Chief thought about the things he filed. About the operational clarity that came from understanding the cost of failure. About the specific discipline of a man who had been doing this since he was 14 years old and had never found a version of the work that didn't carry the weight of it. That's the objective, he said. He found Cade on the maintenance walkway at 2,200. Cade was in the position Chief had been in the previous morning, at the walkway's edge, looking at the city below, the traveler at the window's upper angle. He had the hand cannon in his hand, not holstered, turning it in the specific way of someone who maintained their equipment when they were thinking about something else. Chief stood beside him. They were quiet for a while. The Vex model, Cade said. The minority timeline. Yes, Chief said. You said you don't optimize for probability, Cade said. You optimize for the outcome you're willing to accept. Yes, Chief said. What outcome aren't you willing to accept? Cade said. Chief looked at the city, at the lights that were always on, at the specific policy of a civilization that had decided darkness was not something it would accept inside its perimeter, at the last safe city doing what it had been doing since before the Guardians existed, surviving. This, he said. Gone. Yes, Cade said. And people who could stop it, Chief said. Choosing not to because the calculation said not to. The Vex, Cade said. Anyone, Chief said. The calculation is always available. The calculation is always the easier path. He paused. I've seen what the easier path produces. Cade was quiet for a moment. The flood, he said. You fought it for 30 years. More, Chief said. Functionally, more. The program started before I was old enough to understand what I was being prepared for. And Cortana, Cade said. Chief was quiet. Sundance told me, Cade said. What you said on the jumpship, that you had something equivalent and you lost it. He paused. I'm not going to ask you about it. I just want you to know I heard it. Chief looked at the traveler, at the damaged sphere above the city, at the thing that had sacrificed itself to push back the darkness and had been silent since, at the specific quality of something that had given everything it had for the people it had chosen and was now present but not active, there but not there, in the specific way of something that had been both lost and not lost simultaneously. He looked at it for a long time. She would have understood this place, he said. It was the most he had said about her since Venus. Cade looked at the traveler. Yeah, he said. I think she would have. They were quiet. The city ran its lights below them. The carrier wave pulsed in Chief's sensor data at its elevated frequency, directed, patient. The announcement of something coming that had been coming for a long time. Tomorrow? Cade said. Yes, Chief said. You ready? Cade said. Chief thought about 30 years of the same question before every engagement. About what ready meant in contexts where ready was the only available option. About the specific quality of a man who had never fully been ready for anything and had done it anyway. Yes, he said. Cade holstered the hand cannon. Good, he said. Me too. He went back through the maintenance hatch. Chief stayed for a while longer. The traveler above the city, the carrier, wave in the sensor data, the minority, timeline. He stayed until the city's 0200 quality settled in, and then he went inside and took his 90 minutes and was ready at 0600. The debris field at 0600 had the specific quality of a place that knew something was coming. Chief registered this as a sensor reading rather than an intuition. The carrier wave intensity at the debris field's boundary was elevated from the previous day's measurement. The directed quality stronger, the specific physics of a signal that was receiving amplification from its source as the source approached. The pyramid ships were closer than they'd been yesterday. The signal was responding accordingly. The strike team had established the perimeter in 40 minutes, 12 Guardians, at 4 positions around the debris field's accessible boundary, Zavala, commanding from the primary position, the specific geometry of a man who had approved a 3-person deep insertion and was going to be as close to it as the operational parameters allowed. The perimeter's function was twofold: prevent taken reinforcement from the debris field's exterior approaches, and secure the extraction corridor when the 3-person team came out. If they came out, Chief had briefed the strike team at 1,600 the previous day with the specific thoroughness of someone who understood that thorough briefings were the difference between a plan and a hope. Every Guardian on the perimeter knew the timeline, the signals, the extraction protocol, and the contingency for each phase of the operation failing. The contingencies were not comfortable. He had briefed them anyway, because comfortable contingencies were fiction, and fiction got people killed. Zavala had watched the briefing without speaking. At the end, he said, "Good. That was sufficient." The 3-person approach to the aperture took 22 minutes. Chief at point, Cade on his left and back, Ikora on his right and back, the specific geometry of a small unit moving through a denied environment, with 1 person's sensor capability providing the navigation and 2 people's combat capability providing the response to whatever the navigation revealed. The carrier wave detection was the path. He could feel the aperture's direction, the way he had learned to feel the pyramid signal's direction, the specific gradient of the path. Elevated carrier wave intensity increasing as they moved toward the connection point. The sensor data building a map of the darkness's concentration in real time. The map refining with each step deeper into the debris field. The Taken were active, not yet aware of the 3-person insertion. The approach had been designed around the specific detection methodology that Chief had identified when placing the monitoring installation, the carrier wave disruption signature, the way his sensors interacted with the darkness substrate. He had found an approach vector that minimized the disruption signature by routing through areas where the carrier wave was already elevated. His sensor's interaction with the signal lost in the ambient noise of the aperture's radiation. It was the difference between a signal and background noise. He was running as background noise. Contact. Left, Cade said, quietly, the operational register, the delight completely absent. Chief saw it on the sensor sweep, a taken Centurion, the Cabal base species. 400 pounds of alien military hardware converted and corrupted, positioned at a debris corridor junction that the approach vector required passing, not on a patrol pattern, fixed position, guarding. Their positioning defensively. Chief said, the aperture. They know it needs protection. They know we're coming, Cade said. They know something is coming, Chief said. The carrier wave disruption from the perimeter team's arrival. 12 Guardians at the boundary produces a light signal the darkness reads as incoming contact. He paused. They don't know it's 3. They're expecting the perimeter force, which means they're positioned to defend against a large assault, Cade said. Not a small insertion. Yes, Chief said. That's good, Cade said, until we reach the aperture, and the small insertion is doing what the large assault would have. Done, Chief said. Then they redirect. How long do we have before the redirect? Cade said. From first contact at the aperture, Chief said. Minutes. How many minutes? Cade said. He looked at the sensor data, at the taken distribution, in the deeper sections, at the specific geometry of the debris field, and the movement patterns of 37 organized contacts. Enough, he said. That's not a number, Cade said. It's the accurate answer, Chief said. Cade was quiet for a moment. Fair, he said. The Centurion at the corridor junction died before it knew it was in an engagement. Chief came through the junction at Mjolnir's full speed, and the BR-85 did its work, and the Centurion dissipated without the specific alert vocalization that the briefings had described as the standard taken response to contact. The speed was the variable. The Centurion's detection methodology had a response time, and Chief's approach had been faster than the response time. They kept moving. The aperture was close. The carrier wave was running at a frequency that the sensor package now registered as almost physically present on the specific quality of a reading, so strong that the sensor package's translation into human interpretable data produced something that felt like pressure rather than information. The darkness concentrated to the point where its presence was a characteristic of the space rather than a reading about the space. They came around a debris formation, and it was there, the aperture, not visible in the conventional sense. A space in the debris where the Hive's throne world architecture intersected with physical reality, the specific dimensional discontinuity of a pocket dimension's access point. To the eye, it looked like a section of the dreadnought hull material that was doing something hull material didn't do, flickering at its edges, the photons at the boundary behaving inconsistently, the specific visual signature of a space that existed in two states simultaneously. The carrier wave was pouring out of it. Not metaphorically, the sensor data rendered it as directional, the signal emanating from the aperture's dimensional connection and spreading outward through the debris field. The pyramid ship's signal was flowing in, and the aperture was amplifying and rebroadcasting it. The throne world's architecture functioning as an unintended antenna for the incoming darkness. There, Ikora said. Yes, Chief said. He looked at the taken distribution around the passed aperture. 14 contacts, the other 23, distributed through the debris field in the defensive positioning he'd predicted. 14 at the aperture's immediate vicinity, the significant defensive force the Taken had allocated to their most important asset. Timeline from first engagement. Ikora said. How long before the others redirect? 2 minutes, Chief said. 3 if we're quiet about the first engagement. Can we be quiet? Cade said. No, Chief said. My teeth. 14 contacts at this range, the engagement will be audible. He paused. 2 minutes. 2 minutes for a Nova bomb, Ikora said. 2 minutes. At 70% capacity in a darkness zone. Can you do it? Chief said. She looked at the aperture. Yes, she said. Then I hold the position for 2 minutes. Chief said. You charge. Cade manages the perimeter contacts. 14 contacts for 2 people, Cade said. You have a ghost and a resurrection, Chief said. I have the position. Cade looked at him. 2 minutes, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. Let's make it a good 2 minutes, Cade said. The engagement began. When Chief stepped into the aperture's immediate vicinity, and the carrier wave disruption his sensors produced registered as incoming contact to the Taken's darkness-connected awareness, all 14 oriented. Simultaneously, the specific quality of directed, Taken, not the individual targeting assessment of autonomous enemies, the coordinated response of a distributed system executing a single instruction. 14 Taken, multiple types. Responding to the aperture's protection directive as a unified force, Chief moved to the position. The position was a debris formation adjacent to the aperture that provided cover from 3 of the 4 approach vectors and left 1 approach uncovered, the uncovered approach being the one that Cade was managing. The position required holding 3 covered vectors, while the 4th was held by Cade's specific combination of hunter mobility, hand cannon precision, and the specific operational chaos that Cade produced deliberately as a force multiplier. The first 4 Taken hit the position. Chief's response was calibrated, not suppression, elimination. Every round had to do specific work because the ammunition was finite and the 2 minutes were 2 minutes, and suppression without elimination meant sustained contact past the timeline. Taken, night. 2 BR, 85 rounds at the joint. Taken, Vandal. Blink pattern established in 3 cycles. 3rd cycle position targeted, 2 rounds. Taken, Centurion. MA5D full auto at the gap in the Cabal armor that the briefings had specified as the penetration point for ballistic weapons. 4 rounds. Taken, Wizard. The wizards were the engagement-specific problem floating, fast, the specific evasion pattern of something that used 3-dimensional space, fully. Chief tracked the pattern and led the target and spent 6 rounds on the wizard, which was more than he preferred and was the correct expenditure. 12 seconds. 4 down. 10 remaining, plus whatever the 23 in the debris field were doing in response to the contact noise. Behind him, Ikora was gathering the light. He could feel it, not see it. The light's presence was in the light active category on his sensor feed, the specific signature of a Warlock Vanguard, drawing the full capability of her subclass in a darkness zone at 70% capacity. The signature was correct. The intensity was what 70% looked like. He filed it and returned to the engagement. At 40 seconds, Cade died for the first time. A Taken Phalanx's shield projector, the specific counter that Cabal Phalanxes carried and that the Taken version had retained and enhanced, caught Cade at close range, and the blast radius exceeded what his armor could absorb at that proximity. He went down. Sundance had him up in 11 seconds. I'm up, Cade said. I know, Chief said. He had covered the position without breaking the pattern. Left side. I see it. Cade said. He was up and back in the engagement in the time it took Chief to process the tactical implication of the resurrection and integrate it. Cade dying was not a loss. He was still building the framework in real time. At 60 seconds, the 23 contacts from the debris field's outer sections began to arrive. Not all 23. The perimeter team was engaging at the boundary. Zavala's 12 guardians applying pressure that was drawing some of the redirected force, but more than had been at the aperture. More than the calculation had included. More is coming, Chief said. I see them, Cade said. Timeline, Chief said to Ikora. 60 seconds, she said. Her voice had the specific quality of someone running at the edge of their capacity, not breaking. At the edge. 60 seconds, Chief said. He adjusted the position. The debris formation's cover geometry was optimal for 3 approach vectors. With additional contacts arriving from the 4th vector, the geometry was no longer optimal. The uncovered approach was receiving volume that Cade's perimeter management couldn't fully contain. He made the calculation. In 2 seconds, he left the covered position, not abandoning it forward, moving into the uncovered approach vector and making the uncovered approach expensive rather than managing it from behind cover that was no longer providing the intended coverage. The specific tactical adjustment of someone who had been doing this long enough to know that the position served the objective, and when the position no longer served the objective, the position was wrong. He moved through the taken. Contacts in the uncovered approach with Mjolnir's full capability expressed, the speed, the mass. The contacts. The hydraulic force of an augmented super soldier in powered armor, operating at the limit of what the suit and the body inside it could do. The Taken came. He was in the middle of them. Up close, the Taken were wrong in a specific way that the BR-85's distance had not communicated. The specific proximity of a corrupted enemy, the black smoke at the edges of their existence, the void where their eyes should have been, and the luminescence that had replaced the void. Chief registered all of it at the level of sensor data, and the sensor data informed the engagement, and the engagement was very loud and very close, and he held the uncovered approach vector by making it a place the Taken couldn't cross. Without going through him. They tried. He made it expensive. At 100 seconds, Cade died for the second time. At 111 seconds, he was up. At 120 seconds, Ikora said, "Now." The Nova Bomb was void light concentrated to the specific point where the energy became a physical thing, a manifestation of the light's full destructive capability. The Warlock subclass's primary application of what the light could do when directed with intent. At 70% capacity, it was smaller than the baseline. It was still the most significant light manifestation Chief had seen in 19 days in this universe. She threw it at the aperture. The carrier wave frequency in his sensor data spiked the specific response of a system. Encountering its counter frequency at significant intensity, the aperture's photon boundary flickered. The darkness signal's output from the aperture stuttered. The Taken in the engagement stopped. Not all of them, not permanently. The specific pause of a directed force whose direction had been interrupted. The half-second of autonomous operation that the directed Taken experienced in the moment the carrier wave's connection to the aperture was disrupted. Half a second was sufficient. Chief used the half-second. He moved through the paused contacts and cleared the approach and returned to the aperture's immediate position and stood in the space where the Taken had been and looked at what the Nova Bomb had done. The aperture was still there, flickering worse. The photon boundary at its edges more inconsistent. The dimensional discontinuity more pronounced. The specific visual signature of a structure that had been significantly damaged and was no longer maintaining its integrity, but still there. "It's not closed," Cade said. "No," Chief said. "Is it disrupted?" Ikora said. She was on her feet. The Nova Bomb's expenditure had cost her. He could see it in her posture. The specific quality of someone who had run their capability to a lower level than they'd started at and was managing the deficit. He checked the sensor data. The carrier wave's output from the aperture was reduced. Not eliminated, reduced. The amplification function that the Throne World's architecture had been providing for the pyramid signal was damaged, operating at diminished capacity. "Partially," he said. "The amplification is damaged. The pyramid signal is still coming through, but the aperture is no longer amplifying it." He paused. "The Taken's directed organization," He checked the distribution data. The 23 contacts from the outer debris sections were no longer moving with the coordinated pattern of directed force. The carrier wave was still present, the pyramid ships were still broadcasting, but without the aperture's amplification, the local signal intensity had dropped below the threshold that had been providing the organizational direction. The Taken were autonomous again. It worked, Cade said. Partially, Chief said. Partially is better than not, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. Extraction, Ikora said. Before the aperture's residual signal rebuilds enough to redirect them. Yes, Chief said. They moved. The extraction was faster than the insertion. The Taken were autonomous. The known quantity, the operational status, the city had been managing for months. Without the directed organization, the contacts in the extraction corridor were individual threats rather than a coordinated force. And individual threats were the specific category that the three of them were best equipped to. Address. Cade died once more in the extraction. He was up in 9 seconds. They reached the perimeter at the 40-minute mark. Zavala was where Zavala was going to be at the primary position. Watching the extraction corridor, the controlled register running at the specific level it ran at when he was managing something that was not yet resolved, he looked at the three of them, at Chief, at Ikora, whose light output was running at 53% on the sensor feed, at Cade, who was checking his hand cannon cylinder with a specific post-engagement habit of someone who always checked their weapon after an engagement, whether it needed checking or not. The aperture, Zavala said. Damaged, Chief said. Amplification function significantly reduced. The Taken have reverted to autonomous operation. Closed, Zavala said. No, Chief said. Zavala absorbed this. What's the aperture's current status? He said. Unstable, Chief said. The Nova bomb's disruption started a degradation process. Without the carrier wave's amplification to sustain it, he checked the sensor feed. The aperture's readings had continued to change since they'd left it. The dimensional structure is collapsing. Not immediately. But the degradation is active and the direction is correct. How long? Zavala said. Chief ran the degradation rate against the sensor data. Days, he said. Not weeks. Zavala looked at the debris field. And the pyramid ships, he said. Still approaching, Chief said. The aperture's damage reduces the local signal amplification, but it doesn't affect the primary signal. The ships are still accelerating. He paused. The timeline hasn't changed. What's changed is that the Taken aren't organized to receive them. A smaller problem inside a larger one, Zavala said. Yes, Chief said. That's the work. Zavala looked at him, at the controlled register running its assessment. The work, Zavala said. One objective at a time, Chief said. The aperture was the objective. The next objective is different. What is the next objective? Zavala said. Chief thought about the pyramid ships in the outer system, about the carrier wave directed at Earth, about the Vex model's small number, about the specific quality of a civilization that had been defending one city for long enough that the defense had become the civilization's primary organizing principle and that it was now facing the thing it had been defending against, about Cortana, about what she would have said in the neural interface, in the specific voice she used when they were in the planning phase before an engagement that had uncertain odds. She would have run the numbers. She would have found the gap. She would have said, "There's always a way, Chief. You just have to find it." He looked at the tower in the distance, at the traveler above it, at the lights that were always on. Ah, the Vanguard needs a briefing, he said. Full operational picture. What we know about the pyramid ships, what we know about the carrier wave, what we know about the minority timeline. He paused. And then we need to find the gap. The gap, Zavala said. There's always a gap, Chief said, between what an extinction-level threat is and what can stop it. The gap is small. It exists. He paused. Finding it is the next objective. Zavala looked at the debris field, at the tower, at Chief. Then, let's find it, he said. Chief stayed in the tower for 31 more days. In those 31 days, Ikora resolved the carrier wave's frequency signature to a precision that allowed the city's sensor network to monitor the pyramid ship's approach in real time. Cade redesigned the Hunter Strike Team protocol for darkness zone operations based on the specific data the Aperture engagement had produced. Zavala drafted the operational framework for the city's response to the pyramid arrival, not a plan, an architecture for planning. The specific preparation of a command structure, building its capacity to respond to conditions it couldn't fully predict. Chief worked with all three of them. He held a position in Zavala's briefings that was never formally named, not a guardian, not a vanguard, not a rank or designation that the tower's institutional architecture had a category for. He was simply there, in the room, contributing what he had to contribute and taking the next objective as it arrived. The Aperture collapsed on the 5th day. The Taken in the debris field reverted fully to the autonomous operation the city had been managing since. Oryx's death, a known quantity, a manageable problem within the larger problem. The pyramid ships continued their approach. On the 48th day, Chief's sensor package detected a specific dimensional anomaly consistent with a Vex temporal. The field's activation signature, the same reading that had pulled his slipspace exit off course on the way in. The Ishtar Sink on Venus, the gate that had redirected him from Harvest, a window, not guaranteed. The Vex temporal fields were not reliable transit mechanisms. His arrival had been the product of a specific interaction between his slipspace drive and the gate's active field, an interaction that required both elements simultaneously. His slipspace drive was still functional. He told Ikora first. She ran the analysis in 4 hours and confirmed the window was real and gave him a transit probability that was better than the probability of most things they'd done in the previous 50 days. "You can go home?" she said. "Yes," he said. "Will you?" she said. He looked at the display, at the carrier wave's directed frequency, at the pyramid ship's approach vector, at the 4 to 6 month timeline that was now 4 to 5 months. He thought about the UNSC, about infinity, about the next mission in the sequence that had been running since he was 14 years old. He thought about what Cortana would have said. "The gap," he said. "The Vex model's minority timeline. The work you're doing here, the carrier wave analysis, the darkness zone operational data, the Taken organization mechanics. You're building toward the gap." "Yes," Ikora said. "You'll find it," he said. "I believe we will," she said. "With or without certainty." She paused. "That's something you taught us." Chief looked at the window, at the specific opportunity of a Vex temporal field and a slipspace drive, and the path between here and Harvest, at the tower below him, at the lights that were always on. He thought about the minority timeline, about how you stayed in it, about what it cost to keep choosing it when the calculation kept producing the same result. He thought about Cade, 6 on the maintenance walkway, saying, "I know which one I'm in," with the thing underneath, the delight fully present and the hand cannon in his hand. He thought about Zavala, saying, "Come back," with the specific weight of a commander who understood what he was asking. He thought about Ikora in her workspace, in the specific silence of someone who had been working on the same problem for a long time and had just received a piece that made it more solvable. He transmitted a full data package to Ikora's workspace. Everything, the complete sensor library, the Forerunner calibration signatures, the carrier wave frequency analysis he'd been building since Venus, the Vex timeline modeling data from Nessus. 30 years of operational experience with extinction-level threats compressed into the specific data formats that Mjolnir's systems could export and Ikora's systems could receive everything he had. He kept a copy. He went to Cade last. Cade was on the maintenance walkway. Of course he was. Window? Chief said. Ikora told me, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. They were quiet for a moment. The minority timeline, Cade said. Yes, Chief said. You're in it, Cade said. So are you, Chief said. Cade looked at the Grows city. Stay in it, Chief said. Cade looked at him. The delight was present. Everything underneath the delight was present. The full Cade, 6, all the things he filed, and all the things he carried, and the specific quality of someone who had been choosing the minority timeline for longer than he remembered and had never stopped. Yeah, Cade said. I will. Chief went to Venus. The Vex temporal field was active. The slipspace drive produced its exit vector. The window was real. He went through it. He came out at harvest. The UNSC emergency beacon. He'd left active for 50 days. Produced an immediate response. The Infinity's patrol route brought it within retrieval range in 6 hours. The specific efficiency of a military organization that had been looking for a missing asset and had kept looking. Captain Lasky met him in the hangar. 50 days, Lasky said. Yes, Chief said. Where were you? Lasky said. Chief thought about the tower and the maintenance walkway, and Cade, 6 with his hand cannon, and Ikora in her workspace, and Zavala's briefing room, and the debris field, and the carrier wave, and the minority timeline. Somewhere that needs help, he said. That's going to get it. Lasky looked at him. Are you all right? Lasky said. Chief thought about the neural interface, about the silence where Cortana was, about the specific thing that the silence still was and would continue to be, and that he continued anyway, because continuing was what he did, and the continuing was the answer to what the silence asked. He thought about Cade on the maintenance walkway, about staying in it. Yes, he said. He went to debrief. The carrier wave was not in this universe's sensor data, but he knew its frequency now. He would recognize it if it arrived. He would be ready. Indeed, more stories await.